On a freezing night in Racine, Wisconsin, Saturday, January the 31st, 2004, a chilling 911 call came in.
Can I help you? Your husband's trying to kill you?
A woman trapped inside a garbage can filled with snow managed to call for help. She whispered that her ex-husband was trying to kill her. As she lay imprisoned in his truck, not knowing where he was taking her, the freezing cold snow pressed around her. She feared for her life. This woman was Terry Gendusa. Born in the mid-60s in Wisconsin, Terry had a happy childhood in a stable family. She was close to her three siblings, lively and full of energy. After high school, Terry attended the University of Wisconsin-Parkside. It was here, through mutual friends, that she first met David Larson in 1983. They often hung out with friends at local pubs, enjoying each other's company. However, their relationship remained purely platonic. It wasn't until 1995, 12 years later, that Terry and David reconnected. By then, Terry had just ended a long-term relationship, and David had recently left the Marine Corps. Both were looking for something serious. Having known each other for years, it felt like the perfect match on paper. They shared a history, and both were ready to settle down. However, Terry later admitted she rushed into the relationship. She felt her biological clock ticking and ignored some serious red flags. David had a bad temper and a clear disdain for women, which she overlooked. Though his anger made her uncomfortable, it was never directed at her. At first, he was more of a Karen toward hospitality workers like waiters, clerks, and cashiers. Terry was embarrassed by his behavior, but never imagined that one day she would be on the receiving end of his rage. For a while, Terry wasn't directly affected by Dave's troubling behavior, but things changed quickly after they married in April 1996. Just 4 days into their honeymoon in Hawaii, Dave hit Terry for the first time. His reason? He didn't like what she was wearing. When she refused to change, he struck her, declaring that now they were married, she had to do whatever he said. He even told her she was bought and paid for. After returning home, there were brief moments of calm, but with someone like Dave, the good times were always followed by dark ones. His behavior grew more abusive over time, both verbally and physically. Dave believed that their marriage was a contract in which Terry had agreed to follow every rule he set. To him, failing to comply meant she deserved punishment, often through extreme violence. Throughout their marriage, Terry tried to leave Dave about 5 times. She would return only when he promised to seek marriage counseling or attend anger management classes. However, once things calmed down, he refused to follow through on those promises, trapping her in a violent cycle. It's important to avoid judging Terry for her decisions. Victims of domestic violence often face complicated situations, and Terry was no exception. Dave controlled every aspect of her life. He made her leave her job, cut her off from her friends, and stripped her of any financial freedom. He forced her to surrender possession of her car, took her car, which was registered in her name, and denied her any access to financial details. Terry was given $25 a week for her expenses, and she had to balance it and show the receipts to the authorities as proof. As Terry feared that there were no ways to escape from the power of her husband, she decided to accept all his requirements, follow all his orders, and attempt to do everything he wanted as well as possible. Persistent use wears off self-esteem, and the individual feels that they are at fault for the circumstance which they are not. Terry finally came to the conclusion that it does not matter how much she tried to be the ideal wife for Dave. He would always have something wrong with her. He would use any reason to lash out, holding her responsible for his own frustrations. By the time Terry had this realization and began planning to leave, she found out she was pregnant. She was thrilled to become a mother but knew the environment wasn't ideal for raising a child. Still, she hoped that becoming a father might change Dave for the better. While Dave did treat Terry better during her pregnancy, things quickly reverted after their daughter Amanda was born in 1997. Their second daughter Holly was born in 1999. But even the joy of becoming a father couldn't change Dave. Finally, during a fight in late 1999, Terry reached her breaking point. Accounts differ on what exactly happened. Either Dave screamed at their oldest daughter Amanda or pushed Terry while she was holding Holly. But one thing was clear: he had crossed a line by involving their children. Realizing she couldn't let her children grow up in such an environment, Terry decided to leave for good. She packed up what she could, took the girls, and went to a women's shelter while filing for divorce. But Dave wasn't going down without a fight. He stalled the proceedings, refused to provide documents, and even smeared Terry's name. He was held in contempt of court for dragging his feet, thinking he could manipulate the outcome in his favor. However, his attempts to badmouth Terry, cuss out judges, and defy his lawyer backfired. Finally, on January 31st, 2001, Terry was granted the divorce, severing her ties with Dave after 3 long and harrowing years. Even after their divorce was finalized, Dave remained in Terry's life. Despite Terry's accounts of her traumatic marriage, a judge awarded joint custody of their daughters. This meant that Terry still had to see the man who had terrorized her during court-ordered custody exchanges. Dave insisted that these exchanges take place at his home, refusing to meet in public despite Terry's pleas. It's unclear how he was able to dictate these terms, but it forced Terry to regularly confront the past she desperately wanted to escape. This constant reminder of her nightmare left Terry convinced that she would never date or marry again. She wanted to focus solely on herself and her daughters. But as they say, love finds you when you least expect it. Just before her divorce, Terry joined the Bel Canto Community Chorus, where she met Nick Nicolai. Nick was immediately drawn to Terry, but he respected her space during her divorce. Over time, their friendship blossomed into romance. Nick was kind, respectful, and empathetic to everything Terry had endured. He also embraced her daughters wholeheartedly, treating them as his own. By May 2001, Terry and Nick officially started dating, and after 2.5 years, they married in October 2003. Terry finally felt like she had the stable and loving family she had always dreamed of. But how did Dave feel about this? Not great. In his mind, despite the finalized divorce, he and Terry were still married in the eyes of God. He believed Terry had betrayed him and God's will by remarrying. This led Dave into blaming Terry for the disruption of the family and vowed to make her suffer for it. On the day they left the court after the divorce had been granted, he told her that one day she would wish that she had not divorced him. Terry, although already being afraid of her ex-husband at this point, believed she had already suffered the worst that he could bring upon her. Unknown to her, that was not the end of it, for Dave had more in store for her. All Terry wanted was to leave that life behind her, and she was doing just that. She had found a new husband who was such a nice man. She had started to try and rebuild her career. And the day before, on January 30th, 2004, she and Nick found out that they were going to have their own child. They were happy, as were Holly and Amanda, who had been longing for a new addition in the family. Terry and Nick could not wait to see the girls the next day to tell them and celebrate with them back from Dave. Saturday, January 31st, 2004, marked the 3-year anniversary of Terry and Dave's finalized divorce. It was a bitterly cold day in Wisconsin. Freezing temperatures, high winds, and snow covered the ground. People described the weather as so frigid it made breathing difficult. But the cold was the least of Terry's concerns. All she could think about was seeing her daughters and telling them about the new baby. As she prepared to pick up the girls from Dave's, Nick offered to go with her. However, Terry declined, knowing that his presence could make things even more tense with Dave. She wanted to avoid any unnecessary confrontation. On her way to his house, she called Dave to let him know when she would arrive. But when she got there around 10 a.m., Dave informed her that the girls weren't ready yet. Annoyed but not wanting to argue, she asked him to hurry, deciding to wait outside in the freezing cold. For almost 20 minutes, Terry paced the driveway, trying to keep warm. Finally, Dave opened the door, but her daughters were nowhere in sight. Instead, Dave came out and told her that the girls were hiding and wanted her to come inside to find them. Immediately, Terry felt uneasy. Dave hadn't allowed her into his house since the day she left him, so his sudden invitation was suspicious. But the bitter cold and her desire not to disappoint her daughters overcame her doubts. She brushed off her suspicions and entered the house, playfully calling out for her daughters as she made her way through. Almost instantly, her uneasy feeling turned to panic. Terry's worst fears were confirmed the moment she felt a searing blow to her head. She didn't realize it immediately, but her ex-husband, Dave, had struck her with a baseball bat. As she collapsed to the floor, Dave continued his assault, striking her repeatedly while yelling, "You always said I was abusing you. Now you can see what abuse really is." He hit her upwards of 20 times until she blacked out. When she regained consciousness, she found Dave binding her with duct tape from head to toe. Panic set in as Terry realized he had something terrible in mind. Desperate, she tried to bargain with him, promising to drop their custody battle and child support, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. Dave was instead fixated on a twisted idea. At some point while he was taping her ankles, her pants had come down, and he became irrationally convinced that Terry had done this deliberately to make him look bad. Further proof of his deceived mindset. Once he'd finished binding her, he placed her bruised, bleeding body into a trash can, packed it with snow, and loaded it into the back of his truck. On one of the coldest days in Wisconsin, he left her half-naked, beaten, and covered in snow, showing no mercy. Despite the horrendous situation, Terry clung to a sliver of hope. In his frenzy, Dave had overlooked one crucial detail. Terry still had her cell phone in her jacket pocket. Though her face was covered with duct tape and swollen so badly that she couldn't open her eyes, she managed to break free from the tape around her wrists. Somehow, she wiggled her phone out of her pocket and dialed 911. Knowing it would be nearly impossible to speak clearly, Terry repeatedly relayed Dave's address to the operator over and over again. Her efforts paid off as it was enough to get the police and rescue dispatched to the scene. By the time they arrived, however, Dave had already loaded Holly and Amanda into his truck and left the house. As the police responded to Terry's call, they unknowingly drove right past Dave's truck, with Terry still bound and hidden in the back. Her vehicle was hitched to the truck, and Terry could hear the sirens fade into the distance. A feeling of defeat washed over her. It seemed they had missed their one chance to save her life. When officers arrived at Dave's home, they were under the impression that someone inside was in distress. With no answer at the door, they forced their way in, only to find the house empty. Meanwhile, neighbors started gathering, and through their questions, the police quickly learned about Dave and Terry's troubled history. It didn't take long for them to realize they were dealing with something far more serious than they had anticipated. However, they had no clear idea of what exactly had transpired. Terry, meanwhile, was fading in and out of consciousness. Despite her critical state, she managed to call her husband Nick, struggling through the duct tape that covered her face to explain what had happened. Nick was horrified but knew that the best way to help her was to quickly alert the police. So they both hung up and called 911 again. Nick reached the same Racine County dispatch center that had received Terry's first call, and the pieces began to fall into place for the police at Dave's residence. They started to see the full, grim picture of the situation. Terry's second call, however, was less successful. By this time, Dave had crossed into Milwaukee County, and the dispatcher there was unaware of the danger Terry was in. Listening to the call, it becomes clear that the severity of the situation was not fully understood by the new dispatcher. It's understandable that 911 dispatchers need to emotionally disconnect to cope with their high-stress jobs. But there is a crucial difference between emotional disconnection for self-preservation and a blatant disregard for the well-being of the caller. In this case, it was unfortunately the second, contributing to the continued risk Terry faced. Terry's second 911 call left many stunned and angered. The operator apparently thought it was a prank, an explanation that hardly justifies her dismissive and venomous tone.
Hello? Can I help you? My husband is trying to kill me. Your husband's trying to kill you? Does he have your handcuffs or what? Masking tape. Masking tape? Then how are you holding the phone? Do you want to talk to me or do you just want to deep breathe?
For anyone listening to Terry's voice on that call, it was painfully obvious that something was terribly wrong. Yet instead of compassion or urgency, Terry was met with skepticism and dismissal. Many sources covering this case choose to gloss over this call, but it remains a glaring example of a critical failure in what should have been a lifeline for Terry. Despite the horrifying situation she was enduring, Terry continued to fight for her life. When she regained consciousness and realized they were still moving, she stuck her hand out of the garbage can, waving it desperately in hopes of attracting the attention of a passing driver. Unfortunately, it was Dave who noticed. Infuriated by her attempt to save herself, he pulled over, struck her with the bat once more, and threatened to shoot her if she tried anything else. As if that weren't enough, her cell phone rang, and Dave snatched away her one link to the outside world. She was now completely isolated. Realizing her situation was terrible, Terry made the decision to play dead, hoping to convince Dave that she was no longer a threat. As he unloaded the trash can from the truck, she lay motionless, faking death. Dave's plan was to leave her for dead in a storage locker. He wheeled the trash can into the unit, duct taped it shut, pushed it into a corner, and piled boxes on top of it to ensure she was completely trapped. He then left, slamming the metal roll-up door behind him, sealing Terry into what he believed would be her tomb. Meanwhile, the police were ramping up their efforts back at Dave's house. With time running out, they knew they had to act quickly despite having little to go on. They issued Amber Alerts for Holly and Amanda, put out all-points bulletins for Dave and Terry's vehicles, and attempted to ping their cell phones. They also conducted a more thorough search of Dave's home, which proved challenging due to the extreme hoarding conditions. The house was filled with old food, dirty dishes, laundry scattered on the floor, and clutter everywhere, with narrow walkways just barely allowing navigation through the space. Would the police piece together enough information in time to save Terry? Or had they already missed their only chance? During their search through Dave's chaotic house, the police made a disturbing discovery. They found Terry's pants, covered in duct tape and blood, along with a massive blood stain on the carpet. The size of the stain suggested that whoever it belonged to, presumably Terry, was in critical condition. Time was clearly running out. If they didn't find her soon, they feared the worst. Despite their best efforts to stay focused on promising leads, every direction seemed to result in dead ends. By nightfall, the police expanded their search to include every place Dave had ever been, hoping something would finally break. This turned out to be a fortunate decision. As luck would have it, they spotted Dave heading to work, casually driving as if nothing had happened. They quickly pulled him over, anticipating a confrontation with a violent and unpredictable man. But when they approached, they found Dave remarkably calm, collected, and most importantly, alone. Terry and her daughters were nowhere in sight. Dave played the role of the bewildered ex-husband to perfection. He acted completely unaware of why the police were so eager to find him. The officers decided to play along, taking a non-confrontational approach. They invited him to the station, saying they had a few questions to clear up some confusion. Surprisingly, Dave agreed without resistance. In the interview room, it became clear that Dave felt untouchable. His arrogance was palpable. Within a few minutes, he told the police that Holly and Amanda were safe at his girlfriend's house. He claimed that he had dropped them off because Terry had failed to pick them up that morning. Then Dave launched into a lengthy tirade about how terrible Terry was, insisting she was the real villain in their story. He ranted about how she had put him through hell for years, completely oblivious to the gravity of his situation. The police let him talk, knowing that sometimes the best way to uncover the truth is to let someone lie until they trap themselves. As Dave tried to paint an innocent picture of his day, he began to create inconsistencies. He was setting the stage for his own downfall. Dave sat down and began recounting his day, painting a picture of a devoted father who had made breakfast for his daughters and patiently waited for Terry to pick them up. According to him, he had waited until 11:30 a.m. before finally giving up and taking the girls to his girlfriend's house. He seemed confident in his story. Unfortunately for him, that one detail would be his undoing. Terry's first 911 call had been placed at 10:57 a.m., and the police had responded to Dave's house by 11:03 a.m., a full 27 minutes before the 11:30 a.m. that Dave claimed he had left. And when the police arrived, Dave wasn't there. This contradiction was a glaring hole in his story. Once they caught him in this lie, the police didn't hold back. They confronted Dave with everything they had: the blood found in his house, Terry's pants, the 911 calls. They hammered him with the mountain of evidence, and as they did, they noticed something shocking. Dave was sitting there calmly answering their questions while wearing pants stained with Terry's blood. He hadn't even realized it. When the detectives pointed this out, Dave scrambled. He tried to change his story, attempting to backpedal as fast as he could. He created a new tale on the spot. He claimed that while packing his daughter's school bags that morning, Terry had somehow snuck into his house, dropped her pants, and attacked him with a hammer. He said that he saw her just in time and was forced to immobilize her with a baseball bat in self-defense. From there, he claimed he blacked out and had no idea what happened next or where Terry was. The detectives weren't buying it. They reminded Dave that it was bitterly cold outside and that if Terry was still alive, time was running out. They appealed to any remaining shred of humanity he might have had, asking him to think of his daughters. But Dave just smiled, yawned, and said he needed a break. He was, in essence, telling them that no matter what, he was determined to ensure that Terry would be dead by the time she was found. It was a shocking display of cold-heartedness. Despite being caught red-handed, literally, Dave showed no concern for Terry's life. His animosity toward her was so intense that he was willing to sacrifice himself just to make sure she suffered. The detectives realized they were dealing with someone who would rather go down for murder than give up his twisted sense of vengeance. Could the investigators find Terry in time despite Dave's stubborn silence? Or would Dave's twisted resolve seal her fate? During the interrogation, Dave requested a break, which due to legal protocols had to be granted to avoid the interrogation being considered coercive. While investigators were obligated to comply, this break turned out to be advantageous for them. While examining Dave's personal belongings, investigators stumbled upon a significant clue. Among the clutter of his wallet, which contained business cards and receipts from various places, they found a business card for a storage facility located in Wheeling, Illinois, nearly 60 miles from Dave's home in Wisconsin. This seemed out of place and suspicious, as it was unusual for someone to store belongings so far from home. Despite the possibility of innocent explanations, time was of the essence. Desperation led the investigators to follow up on this lead. They contacted the storage facility and learned that Dave had indeed rented a unit there and had accessed it just hours after Terry's disappearance. This discovery intensified their suspicion, and they decided to investigate further. The facility attendant was asked to check the storage unit for anything unusual. After a tense wait, the attendant reported hearing sounds that suggested someone might be inside. This was a critical moment. Investigators instructed the attendant to call local law enforcement immediately, and Racine County Police set out for Wheeling, knowing that every second counted. As the Wheeling police arrived at the facility, they were prepared with a pry bar to force their way into Dave's storage unit. The urgency was visible, with the hope that this lead was not a dead end. Upon entering the unit, their initial optimism lowered as they observed only boxes, shelves, and a trash can. It was the trash can that ultimately caught their attention. It was duct taped shut, which led them to believe that if Terry was in the storage unit, she would be inside this trash can. The officers proceeded with caution, removing the tape and opening the lid. Inside, they found Terry, bound with duct tape, bloodied, and barely alive. She was curled up in a fetal position, frostbitten, and in a state of severe hypothermia, with her body temperature having dropped to 86 degrees. Despite her terrible condition, having survived 27 hours in such horrific circumstances, Terry's survival was nothing short of miraculous. She had lost a significant amount of blood, suffered severe frostbite, and was in a critical state physically and mentally. But what wasn't immediately apparent was the full extent of her internal injuries. Her blood pressure and respiratory rate were dangerously slow, and her kidneys were failing. Despite these grave conditions, Terry was rushed to the hospital on February 1, 2004. Her medical team was initially not sure about her chances of survival, but against all odds, Terry began a slow but remarkable recovery over nearly 2 months. Although she lost all 10 toes to frostbite and tragically miscarried her and Nick's baby, her survival was proof of her strength and resilience. Dave Larson was tried and convicted on multiple charges, including attempted murder, kidnapping, obstructing child custody, and interstate domestic violence. He is currently serving a life sentence. In 2010, he attempted to appeal his conviction, claiming double jeopardy, but the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals rejected his claim. Determined, Dave tried to escape from prison using a complex plan involving a fake medical emergency, but he was unsuccessful. In addition to his prison sentence, Wisconsin ordered Dave to pay $3.4 million in restitution to Terry, as well as $300,000 to Nick, Amanda, and Holly. Dave's attempt to avoid this financial obligation by filing for bankruptcy was denied, as his debts were deemed the result of his own malicious actions. Dave continued to make legal attempts to involve himself in Terry's life, filing numerous requests for visitation with his daughters and for reductions in child support payments. These requests were consistently denied. Now, as Holly and Amanda are both in their 20s, Dave's ties to Terry are officially severed. Despite the trauma Dave inflicted on her, Terry has shown remarkable strength and forgiveness. She views Dave as the true victim of his actions, reflecting a profound glass-half-full mindset. Terry and Nick welcomed a son following her recovery. Today, Terry works as a public speaker, advocating for victims' rights and educating others on how to escape abusive relationships. She has played a significant role in drafting laws like the Wisconsin SAFE Act and Marcy's Law, and partners with Generations Against Bullying. Terry has truly become a powerful force for change and support for victims. On August 22, 2005, Stacy made a panicked call to 911, reporting that her husband, David Castor, hadn't shown up for work.
Police Communications, can I help you?
My name is Stacy Castor. My husband has locked himself in our bedroom for the last day.
Has he ever mentioned hurting himself or harming himself or?
Friday night when we were arguing, he told me to get out, take my kids and get out. I could leave.
Okay, don't cry. We're going to check on him, make sure he's okay.
According to Stacy, David had gotten upset, taken a bottle of Southern Comfort, and locked himself in the bedroom, refusing to come out. She assumed he had been drinking heavily and was simply sleeping it off. She even told her friend Danny Coleman that when she pressed her ear to the door, she could hear him breathing. When police arrived and forced open the bedroom door, they found David Castor dead from what appeared to be a self-murder. On the nightstand, they discovered 2 glasses, one containing antifreeze. Beneath the bed, they found an open bottle of antifreeze. In the kitchen, a turkey baster with the smell of alcohol was found in the trash, raising suspicions about what had really happened. Stacy told detectives that David had been struggling with depression due to the recent loss of his father and suggested that his heavy drinking and apparent self-murder were connected to his grief. However, those who knew David, including his ex-wife, Janice Poisson-Farmer, did not believe he would take his own life. Detective Dominic Spinelli remained unconvinced by the self-destruction theory and launched a 2-year investigation. He found that David's will left everything to Stacy and her 2 daughters, with nothing going to his own son, David Jr., which raised more questions. Spinelli also noticed similarities between David's death and the sudden passing of Stacy's first husband, Michael Wallace. Further digging revealed that Wallace had no serious health issues apart from a hernia. With rising suspicions that both men were poisoned with antifreeze, known for its painful and lethal effects, investigators decided to exhume Wallace's body to check for the signature crystals in his organs that were caused by antifreeze poisoning. On September 5, 2007, Michael Wallace's body was exhumed to uncover the truth behind his sudden death. The autopsy results were chilling. Sergeant Michael Norton of the Onondaga County Sheriff's Office recalled the medical examiner telling him that Wallace was loaded with crystals, a clear sign of antifreeze poisoning. Detective Spinelli, who had been investigating the deaths, realized this wasn't just a coincidence. He was convinced that both Michael Wallace and David Castor had been murdered, and Stacy Castor was likely responsible for both deaths. Police ramped up their investigation. They placed surveillance cameras at Stacy's home and at the cemetery where her husbands were buried. They also wiretapped her phone, and through one of these calls, they learned that Stacy had visited the cemetery shortly after Michael Wallace's body had been exhumed. On September 7, 2007, Stacy was brought in for questioning. During the interview, she made a suspicious slip-up. Detective Spinelli asked her which glass she had used to pour cranberry juice for her husband. Stacy responded, "Well, when I poured the anti-free, before quickly correcting herself to say, "I mean the cranberry juice." Spinelli immediately picked up on the mistake, but Stacy became defensive, accusing him of trying to frame her, and abruptly ended the interview. Just days later, on September 12, 2007, a new twist emerged. Ashley Wallace, Stacy's daughter, had just started her first day of college when detectives visited her with devastating news. Her father, Michael Wallace, had been poisoned with antifreeze. Shaken, Ashley called her mother, and police wiretaps captured their conversation. Stacy asked Ashley about what the detectives had told her and then suggested they share a drink to unwind after a tough day. Ashley, trusting her mother, accepted the drink. But something was wrong. Ashley began to feel drowsy and eventually passed out, winding up unconscious in her bedroom. Unknown to her, this was another attempt by Stacy to cover her tracks. On September 13, 2007, Ashley Wallace woke up with a hangover after drinking with her mother the previous night. Despite feeling unwell, she went to school as usual. When she returned home, Stacy Castor suggested they celebrate Ashley's upcoming 21st birthday early by drinking again. Ashley agreed, and her mother prepared another cocktail for her. According to former detective Valerie Brogan, Stacy's plan seemed odd from the start. The drink didn't taste good, and Ashley remembered her mother encouraging her to use a straw and drink quickly, telling her to push the straw to the back of her throat to avoid the bad taste. Ashley followed her mother's instructions, but soon felt overwhelmingly tired and went to lay down. By this point, Stacy Castor was panicking. The police were closing in on her after exhuming Michael Wallace's body and finding antifreeze traces. Desperate to shift the blame, Stacy hatched a plan to frame her own daughter, Ashley, for the murders of both her father, Michael Wallace, and her stepfather, David Castor. Earlier that week, Ashley had been questioned by investigators at her college about her father's death, and they informed her that he had been poisoned. Shocked and upset, she had called her mother, who then invited her over to unwind with drinks. The following day, after their second drinking session, Ashley's younger sister, Bree, found her unconscious in bed. Alarmed, Bree insisted that help be called. Stacy made the 911 call, but before paramedics arrived, a mysterious self-murder note appeared by Ashley's side. The note, supposedly written by Ashley, confessed to the murders of both her father and stepfather. Stacy quickly took the note and handed it to the paramedics, trying to paint the picture of a guilt-ridden daughter. But this attempt to divert suspicion would soon crumble as investigators dug deeper into the case. Tests revealed that Ashley had potentially fatal levels of painkillers in her system. She was dangerously close to death and would have likely died if she hadn't been rushed to the hospital just in time. When Ashley regained consciousness, investigators questioned her about the alleged self-destruction note and her father's murder. Confused, she explained that the last thing she remembered was her mother giving her a drink, a situation that had never happened before. Ashley was adamant that she didn't write the note and had no idea why the police were questioning her about the deaths of her father and stepfather. And finally, after 2 years of building their case, investigators finally arrested Stacy Castor in 2007. She was charged with second-degree murder for the death of her second husband, David Castor, and for attempting to kill and frame her own daughter, Ashley. During the trial, prosecutors argued that the so-called self-murder note, which was supposedly written by Ashley, was actually Stacy's creation. At the time of her father, Michael Wallace's death, Ashley had only been 12 years old. On the witness stand, she firmly denied any involvement in either of the murders and insisted that she had never written the note. Onondaga County District Attorney William Fitzpatrick and his team built a compelling case. They pointed out that David Castor's self-murder never made sense, as his fingerprints weren't found on the glass or the antifreeze container. Further investigation revealed a turkey baster in the kitchen trash, containing traces of ethylene glycol, the toxic substance found in antifreeze, along with David's DNA. Prosecutors argued that this was proof Stacy had force-fed David the antifreeze. To support their case, the prosecutors pointed to the evolution of David's illness, suggesting Stacy had administered the poison over time, using the baster to make his death appear self-inflicted. She even claimed David had gotten the idea from watching a news report about another woman, Lynn Turner, who had poisoned her lovers using antifreeze. Prosecutors presented strong evidence that antifreeze poisoning could be identified by the growth of calcium oxalate crystals in the kidneys, a key detail that showed up in the autopsies of both Michael Wallace and David Castor. These crystals are a clear sign of antifreeze ingestion, linking both deaths to poisoning. Along with this technical proof, prosecutors pointed to money as a major motive for Stacy Castor's actions. They revealed that she had changed David's will to cut out his son from his inheritance, a move that meant more money for herself and her daughters. Castor was not only after the insurance payouts, but was also trying to secure his estate for her own benefit. Cayuga County Sheriff Dave Gould added that the pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place in 2005. He explained that if David Castor hadn't died, or if Michael Wallace had been cremated, the truth about the murders might have never been discovered. The investigation might have never gone as far as it did. In their search of Stacy Castor's computer, prosecutors found multiple drafts of the supposed self-murder note that had been left by her daughter Ashley. The timestamps on these drafts proved that Ashley was in school at the time, making it impossible for her to have written the note. This led investigators to believe that what had been labeled a attempted took his own life was actually a premeditated attempt to murder Ashley and frame her for the deaths of her father and stepfather. Ashley Wallace took the stand, recounting how her mother had convinced her to drink the strange, bitter-tasting drink just before her near-death experience. She explained that she trusted her mother, which was why she drank it, despite how bad it tasted. Ashley maintained her innocence, both in the murders and in writing the self-murder note, firmly denying any involvement in the tragic events. Castor's defense team, attorneys Charles Keller and Todd Smith, focused on creating doubt about her involvement in the murders. Their strategy was to poke holes in Ashley's version of events and suggest that Ashley, who was just 11 years old at the time of her father's death, could have been capable of murder. They tried to argue that Ashley might have had a motive due to Wallace's favoritism toward her younger sister Bree, and they suggested jealousy could have driven her to commit such a terrible act. For David's death, they brought up the troubled relationship between him and Ashley as evidence that the two didn't get along well. Castor's mother even believed that her granddaughter Ashley was guilty of the murders. In a final attempt to convince the jury of her innocence, Castor herself took the stand. During cross-examination, Onondaga County District Attorney grilled Castor, pointing out flaws in her version of events. Castor insisted that it was Ashley who had killed Wallace and David, though she couldn't offer a clear motive other than suggesting that Ashley might have had mental health issues.
Mrs. Castor, in the 3 letters that we have evidence here that you wrote to Lynn, the last guy, how many times do you recall referring to your daughter Ashley?
Probably a lot.
And how many times in those letters did you tell Lynn that you still love your daughter Ashley?
I don't know.
How about not one single time? Does that sound correct?
Could be.
Could be. Could be that you referred to her very negatively, didn't you?
I'm sure I did.
That's right, because she killed, after all, your 2 husbands, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
She did. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about a list of reasons why Ashley killed. We'll start with Michael Wallace, her own father. If you had to put these on a list for the jury, let's start with reason number 1.
I don't know.
No, I'll overrule. Go ahead.
I can't give you a reason why she would do it.
So if I give you 10 reasons, we're going to start at number 1, and number 1 is I don't know. Did anybody in the year 2000 know Ashley Wallace better than you?
Probably not.
Did anybody in the year 2005 know Ashley Wallace better than you?
Probably not.
And you, as you just said, have been in jail for 16 months for a crime you claim you didn't commit, correct?
That's true.
And your answer to this jury, when I ask you to give them the number 1 reason why Ashley Wallace killed her own father with antifreeze and then stuffed rat poison down his throat, your answer is, I don't know. Correct?
That's correct.
Fitzpatrick was quick to counter, pointing out that Castor had never sought therapy for Ashley, and that Ashley had shown no signs of mental illness. He also asked why, after working for an ambulance company for years, Castor had waited 17 hours to get Ashley help when she was seriously ill. Fitzpatrick noted how Castor had dismissed David's condition, saying he looked okay, even though he was vomiting and struggling to stand. He questioned how any mother who had lost 2 husbands to poisoning would fail to seek medical help for her own daughter in a similar situation. The back and forth between Fitzpatrick and Castor grew heated, with Fitzpatrick raising his voice and even shouting at her. Keller, Castor's attorney, frequently objected, at one point requesting a mistrial due to the intensity of the cross-examination. Prosecutors introduced another critical piece of evidence during the trial: the typing sounds on police wiretaps. These sounds were heard while Castor was talking to a friend on the phone, even though she denied remembering using her computer that day. The prosecution argued that these sounds matched the sound of Castor typing one of several drafts of the self-murder note meant to frame her daughter, Ashley. Ashley had already testified that she had seen her mother working on the computer, which Castor had tried to hide from her.
I got a question for you. Wednesday night and Wednesday afternoon, were you on the computer at any time during that day?
No, I don't think so. I don't remember.
You were asked that question, then your lawyer asked you like a couple of questions later, do you remember typing that day? And you said no, absolutely not. How is it that you're certain you weren't typing at the keyboard when you can't remember whether or not you were at the computer?
Well, if I wasn't at the computer, I couldn't be typing.
Well, you didn't say you weren't at the computer. You said you weren't sure if you were at the computer. How can you be not sure whether or not you were at the computer, but you're certain that you weren't typing? How can that be?
I answered the question he asked me.
I know you answered the question. That's not answering the question I asked you. How can you be sure that you weren't typing, but not sure if you were at the computer? Don't you type when you're at the computer?
Yeah,
You can't operate the computer without doing a little of this stuff, right?
true.
Okay. So yesterday you said, in response to this question, were you at the computer on Wednesday? You said, I really don't know. I can't remember, right?
Yes?
And then he asked you, did you type anything that day? And you said, absolutely not.
Objection, Judge. I didn't ask if you typed anything that day.
District Attorney Fitzpatrick suggested that this was the day Castor wrote the note, which bore her fingerprints but not Ashley's, in an effort to pin the murders on her daughter. He highlighted a key detail. The word antifreeze was written as anti-free in 4 different places within the note, matching the slip of the tongue Castor made during an interview when she said anti-free. Castor had claimed she was simply cutting herself off mid-sentence because she intended to say something else.
I took this picture of one like it out of my folder, and I showed it to Stacy and said I had a question for you. Stacy, regarding these glasses that were on top of the nightstand next to David's bed, you told us earlier that you had gotten David some cranberry juice and some water. By looking at the photo, would you be able to tell me which glass it was that you brought into David? Stacy leaned into the photo, was looking at it, at which time she said, when I poured the antifreeze, I mean the cranberry juice, you're confusing me, you're jumping all over the place. At that point I said, Stacy, I simply asked you one question. I didn't jump all over, it was just one question, if you know which glass it was. At that point, the interview continued.
When she said to you, when I poured the antifreeze, are you certain it was antifreeze and not antifreeze with a Z?
It was anti-free, absolutely positive.
Thank you very much, Detective. I have no more questions.
Castor's defense team tried to counter this by bringing in a pharmaceutical expert to challenge the prosecution's argument that Castor had drugged Ashley 17 hours before she was taken to the hospital. However, on February 5th, 2009, the jury found Castor guilty of second-degree murder for poisoning her husband, David, and attempted second-degree murder for overdosing Ashley. When the verdict was read, Castor closed her eyes and remained silent. Her lawyer, Charles Keller, announced that they would appeal the decision, including challenging the admission of evidence related to Wallace's death, for which Castor had not been charged. On March 5th, 2009, during Stacy Castor's sentencing, prosecutor Christine Garvey made a powerful statement to Judge Fahey, urging him to impose the maximum consecutive sentences due to the extreme severeness of David's death. Garvey described Castor as cold, calculating, and without any emotion for what she had done. She criticized how Castor had partied with friends in her backyard, acting like nothing was wrong, while her daughter Ashley lay comatose in her bedroom. Human life is sacred, Garvey continued, but Stacy Castor places no value on human life, not even her own flesh and blood. To Stacy Castor, human beings are disposable. David's son, who Castor had cheated out of his inheritance, also spoke in court. He begged Judge Fahey to press the harshest punishment on Castor. Judge Fahey, visibly shaken by the case, told Castor that he had never seen a parent try to murder their own child to cover up the crime they had committed. He declared that Castor was in a class all by herself. He sentenced her to the maximum term of 25 years to life for the murder of her husband, David. Additionally, she received another 25 years for attempting to murder Ashley. For forging David's will to exclude his son from the inheritance, Judge Fahey added an extra sentence of 16 months to 4 years in prison.
All right, Ms. Everly, I have your note that the jury's reached a verdict. If you'd stand for a moment. On indictment number 2007-1271-1, the people of the state of New York versus Stacey R. Castor. As to count number 1, murder in the second degree, what is the verdict?
Guilty.
On count 2, attempted murder in the second degree, what's the verdict?
Guilty.
And on count 3, offering a false instrument in the first degree, what is the jury's verdict?
Guilty.
All right. Do you wish the jury poll, Bill? Chuck?
Yes, Judge.
All right. Kelly, go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as stated through your foreperson, you have found the defendant guilty of all 3 counts in the indictment. Juror number 1, is that your verdict? Yes. Juror number 2?
Yes.
Juror number 3? Yes. Juror number 4? Yes. Juror number 5?
Yes.
Juror number 6?
Yes.
Juror number 7?
Yes.
Juror number 8?
Yes.
Juror number 9?
Yes.
Juror number 10? Yes. Juror number 11? Yes. And juror number 12?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of both parties and myself and the people of Onondaga County, I want to take this opportunity to thank you and you folks who are alternates, your patience too over the last several days when you haven't been able to deliberate. I'm very, very grateful for your patience and your understanding also. Your jury service is over. You're certainly free to go with our thanks. You're free to talk to anybody about the case that you wish, whether it be the lawyers, the press, each other, your families. But I want to thank you really with very sincerely, and I hope stay warm.
Thank you. I'd like to interject, if you don't mind.
With her sentencing complete, Castor's fate was sealed, and she was left to face the long years ahead behind bars. The trial lasted for 4 intense weeks, during which Ashley Wallace took the stand to speak about the impact her mother had on her life. With tears in her eyes, Ashley told the judge that she hated her mother for ruining so many people's lives. Yet despite her anger, she still expressed love for the bond they once shared. "I never knew what hate was until now," Ashley confessed.
The biggest question I ask is why? Why did she do these things? I know that's probably never going to be answered. There are so many things that she has ruined. She'll never be able to see Bree graduate. My father will never take me down the aisle. She'll never get to see her grandchildren. All those things she took away from me. She killed 2 people and tried to kill me and blame it on me and blame me for the other deaths. That bothers me so much. I had to pretend for a year that everything was okay, that nothing was bothering me, even though I was worried about the trial and worried whether the jury would believe me. I hate my mother for ruining so many people's lives. I didn't even know why she did it. What gave her the right to play God with people? And I hate her for having me be the one that found my dad, just like her for having Bree found me. I never knew what hate was until now. Even though I do hate her, I still love her at the same time. That bothers me. It's so confusing. How can you hate someone and love them at the same time?
She went on to say that she wished her mother would apologize for everything she had done, especially the lies. "As horrible as it makes me feel, this is goodbye, Mom," Ashley said.
I had all these fears about if the jury hadn't believed me. What if she got out and tried to hurt me again? Or what if she tried to hurt my sister? I didn't kill anyone and I didn't try to kill myself. I would never leave my sister or Matt. I just don't understand how you can say you love someone and in the next breath try to kill them. I wish she had told me what was going on. She was my best friend and she took that all away just because she got scared. Well, I was scared too when I was in the hospital all by myself and I wanted my mom. But she was the one that did this. I just want to sleep one night without thinking about this. I'm not an angry person and I hate being mad at her. I want to forgive her, but I'm not sure if I can. I just hope God can forgive her. She has to listen to me this time. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye, and this will be the last time I get a chance. As horrible as it makes me feel, this is goodbye, Mom. As hard as you tried, I survived, and I will survive because now I'm surrounded by people that love me. I'm going to do good things in this world, despite making me, in every sense of the word, an orphan. Thank you, Judge Fahey, for letting me express my feelings.
The weight of Ashley's words remained in the courtroom, showing the complex emotions that came with being betrayed by someone so close. Ashley's statement made it clear that, despite the pain and betrayal, she had found strength in her survival and in the love and support of others. Prosecutor William Fitzpatrick informed the court that, according to New York sentencing guidelines, Stacey Castor would have to serve more than 51 years before she could be considered for parole. Given her age, that effectively meant she would spend the rest of her life in prison. Despite the overwhelming evidence against her, Castor continued to maintain her innocence. In a 2009 interview with Muir, she adamantly declared, "I did not kill Michael Wallace, I did not kill David Castor, and I did not try to kill my daughter, period. And I will never say that I did, ever." Her words, however, did little to change the fact that her crimes had shattered so many lives. Ashley Wallace said that her mother had once been her best friend, but that she had taken all of that away. She expressed that she would have done anything for her mother, but her mother had chosen to try and kill her instead. Stacey Castor, now identified as New York Department of Corrections inmate number 09G0209, was placed in Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for Women in Bedford Hills, New York. Even with credit for time served, her earliest possible release date was June 15, 2055, which was just over a month before her 88th birthday. This date seemed to mark the harsh reality of her crimes and the deep impact she had caused. In April 2009, a 2-hour 2020 special aired on ABC News, which covered Castor's trial. During the media coverage, she was often referred to as the Black Widow, a nickname previously given to Lynn Turner, who was also convicted of poisoning her partners. In the special, Ashley admitted that she still did not understand how her mother, or any mother for that matter, could try to kill her own child. It was a question that had also haunted the public. How could someone so close, so trusted, betray their own child in such a way? Despite the overwhelming evidence, Castor maintained her innocence, stating that she was shocked by the verdict. She claimed that Ashley had brought this situation on herself and suggested that both of them knew what had happened. Nevertheless, she did express some sympathy for her other daughter, Bree, and claimed that some family members still supported her. Bree, like her sister Ashley, had not spoken to Castor after the trial. She acknowledged that although losing her mother was difficult, she was relieved that the verdict had found Castor guilty, as they all knew she was guilty. Ashley, too, expressed that she would have done anything for her mother, but instead, her mother had tried to kill her. ABC interviewed forensic psychiatrist Dr. James Knoll about the case, and he addressed viewers' questions via video on April 23, 2009, and through site comments on April 27, 2009. He pointed out that most self-murder notes tend to focus on themes of remorse, with the writer expressing an inability to go on with life. However, the note that was supposedly written by Ashley focused instead on removing blame from Castor. Knoll noted that this theme appeared 14 times within the note, which led him to believe that Castor would never admit to guilt. He explained that individuals like Castor, who are guilty of such crimes, often follow the code of deny, deny, deny until the very end. Castor's story was adapted into a Lifetime television film titled Poison Love, The Stacey Castor Story. The film, part of the Ripped from the Headlines series, premiered on February 1, 2020. Nia Vardalos portrayed Castor in the film, which retold the chilling events surrounding her crimes. Stacey Castor was found dead in her cell on June 11, 2016. At first, it wasn't clear how she had died, and her death was listed as undetermined. However, the DA's office later confirmed that she had died of a heart attack, with no signs of foul play or ended her own life. She was only 48 years old and had never seen her daughters again after the trial. What would you do if you found out someone you loved tried to harm you? Do you think Ashley will ever find closure after everything she's been through? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys soon.
Let me see. That's something. Oh, who appears to be a skull cap?
Well, let's rewind a bit to a quiet neighborhood in Hocking County, Ohio, on the afternoon of July 25th, 2020. when 56-year-old James Jim Whitaker suddenly disappeared.
Do you know anything about a gravesite being here? Well, the dog actually alerted to it right there, where it's laid up against the tree. Right here, you see this? There's three big, looks bloodish.
He's a bad person.
In what way?
Every way, I have no opinion.
Police thought their main task would be solving the mystery of his whereabouts. But what if there was more to this case than a simple missing person? It was just a typical day for the locals until sheriff's deputies received reports of gunshots ringing through the area. Deputies quickly responded, making their way to a house that, on the surface, looked just like any other on that street.
How we doing?
All right.
We shot Ben. 40.
Up down the road.
Well, she said you got where's shooting?
I shot Ben.
Shooting 22.
There they were met by two residents, 18-year-old Melody Dixon and her 40-year-old father, Michael Dixon, or Mike, as most people called him. The two seemed calm and cooperative, and as the deputies spoke with them, it was clear that both Melody and Mike had lived at this property for a while. Mike, it turns out, had been staying there for around 2 years, while Melody had moved in just a few months prior. But could they have been hiding something behind that calm exterior? At that moment, there was nothing particularly unusual about their behavior to suggest any cause for concern, and it seemed like a simple call for a noise complaint. Nothing more.
What'd you shoot in it? What kind of ammo?
Hold on.
Okay. That'd be terrific. Was you shooting anything else?
That and the 22.
Okay. We had
I only shot that once, and I can show you where it hit the tree.
Okay.
Because I know they go far. It's like shooting a rifle, the new ones.
Well, it's no big deal. We had somebody that fired a gun and it struck a windshield. Nobody got hurt or anything like that.
So the deputies did what anyone might expect. They addressed the situation and gave the two a warning to avoid any future disturbances. But was this really just an ordinary visit? As we would soon learn, things were far from ordinary. Only hours after this seemingly routine visit, deputies would return to the very same property, but this time under entirely different circumstances. Not long after the deputies left, another call came in, this time from the family of Jim Whitaker, the very friend who owned the property where Mike and Melody were staying. Jim's family reported that he was missing, and they hadn't heard from him in days. His mother was especially concerned. She mentioned that she'd last spoken with Jim around the 4th of July, nearly 3 weeks before. They had spoken often and usually checked in with each other regularly, so this silence seemed very out of character. But what could have led Jim to just vanish without a word? The family was deeply unsettled by his sudden disappearance, and the police now had a new concern on their hands, a missing person, and when deputies returned to the house, they discovered something even more troubling.
He had a 50-pound bag of dog food in one hand, a dog, a live dog, a chainsaw, and reached over and grabbed 5 arrows off of that thing that's out there and a pair of gloves.
Well, those weren't all. Upon investigation, deputies learned that, along with Jim, several of his belongings, items one wouldn't expect to go missing under normal circumstances, had mysteriously disappeared from the home. Key items like a firearm, a crossbow, and 2 TVs were missing. But who would have taken these things, and why? The family also reported seeing Mike acting suspiciously not long after the first deputies had left, further fueling concerns about Jim's sudden disappearance. Had Mike or someone else taken Jim's belongings, or was something more alarming at play?
It's possible that he just took his personal possessions right here in this area.
It's very unlikely. He has struggled to keep this house
I'm just
for
saying it's
years.
a possibility.
It's a possibility.
Okay.
But he would have done that when my mom died, not now, just all of a sudden.
Okay.
Well, the deeper the deputies dug, the stranger the story became. The next big clue came from Jim's friend, Keith. When police spoke with Keith to piece together any additional information, he mentioned a peculiar detail that only added to the mystery. Keith claimed that Mike had shown him a strange note allegedly written by Jim nearly 2 weeks earlier, on July 12th. This note didn't sit right with Keith or Jim's family.
Mike came out. We were fiddling with something in the garage. Mike was fixing something, and I was sitting there. He fiddling with it. He came in the house, and then he come back out, and he's like, "I just found this in Melody's stuff," and it sounded like an
profession
odd
of love
profession love to Mike's and his daughter, that girl Melody slash knows.
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
you know,
Very weird.
It was signed Jimbo. I didn't think Jimmy ever signed his name Jimbo, you know.
The note was off in several ways. Jim's own mother and daughter, who knew him best, said it didn't sound like Jim at all. The handwriting didn't match his style, and the way it was worded seemed foreign to his usual tone. So, who had really written this note, and why? Could it have been a genuine message from Jim, or was it meant to mislead? Well, the note itself would become a key piece of the puzzle, but at this point, the deputies still didn't realize the full picture of what they were dealing with. They knew one thing, though: Jim was missing, and the only people who might have the answers, Mike and Melody, were also nowhere to be found. As the investigation progressed, the urgency to locate Mike and Melody increased. The deputies knew that finding them could help explain what had happened to Jim, especially since they were the last known people to have seen him. The situation was beginning to look more serious, and with Mike and Melody gone, more questions arose. Where could they have gone? Why had they left so suddenly? It was the very next day that several deputies, along with detectives from the sheriff's office, returned to Jim's property armed with a warrant to conduct a deeper search. They hoped this would reveal more about Jim's whereabouts, and potentially the whereabouts of Mike and Melody as well. As they moved through the house, room by room, what they uncovered would paint an even darker picture than anyone could have anticipated.
What's in the basement?
That's where Michael was staying at. There's a bunch of crap. I would definitely
Wear what?
I'd definitely wear gloves. It's dirty.
Who kicked in the door?
Me.
I'm just trying to determine what was like it and what was new, that type of thing.
But that door has never been locked. Never, ever.
So
Mike can put that on there.
Do you know why?
No, I have no idea why.
The tension in the air was thick, and as they went through clues, the pieces of the puzzle slowly started to come together. There was an eerie sense that something tragic had unfolded here. So what exactly did they find in the house? Could it finally answer where Jim was and why Mike and Melody had fled? The search revealed disturbing evidence that turned the missing person case on its head. It was now more than just a question of where Jim was. It became a question of what had happened to him and whether Mike and Melody were more involved than they initially let on. Investigators could feel the gravity of the case weighing heavily on them as they connected each detail, each clue, to a more sinister picture. Had the quiet father-daughter pair been hiding something darker all along? Could there have been signs, even in that first encounter with the deputies, that something was wrong? And if so, how did it slip by unnoticed? As the investigation continued, it became increasingly clear that finding Mike and Melody was crucial to uncovering the truth about what really happened on this seemingly ordinary property in Hocking County. But with each passing hour, the urgency grew. Would they find them before it was too late? Now, when the officers stepped into that dimly lit basement, they knew right away that this wasn't going to be a simple investigation. The conditions were rough, even unsettling, but one detail raised an immediate question. If both Michael and Melody were living there, why was there only one bed? Could there be a deeper reason behind this unsettling arrangement? The bed was just the beginning, the tip of a much darker iceberg lurking beneath the surface.
Smells like feet.
I think I smell quit. What? So I think I quit smelling a while ago. No blondies.
I did.
The camo bag?
No, the blood.
I saw the camo bag I flipped.
You can have the light
Looks
on.
like blood.
Right there. See the glove?
I was looking at that bag right there.
Right here. You see this? There's three big. It looks bloodish. There's four, actually.
The basement's grim, almost inhospitable state pushed the officers to regroup upstairs. They knew they needed extra help to search every corner of the property, so they called in a canine unit to investigate every inch, inside and out.
Alright, let's collect that stuff in the basement real quick while I send her downstairs. You're going home and taking a bath? Yes.
But even with a trained dog on the case, there was another mystery. The canine didn't alert to anything upstairs or downstairs, not even when it passed a camouflage print bag in the basement that supposedly had drops of blood on it. How could that be? A second dog was brought in to double-check, yet the result was the same. No alerts, no leads. But could there still be something overlooked? The investigator, determined not to miss a thing, swabbed the bag and secured it as evidence before expanding the search outside. While combing the yard, a detective spotted what looked like a tombstone, and here, the canine finally alerted. Could this be a breakthrough? Just as they prepared to dig, Jim's daughter arrived and dashed their hopes, explaining that the headstone had likely carried scent from another cemetery, leading to a false alert.
Do you know anything about a gravesite being here? Not your dad's, but there's a World War I.
Oh, no. That's just okay, so here's what happened. That got, me and my mom actually got that from, that's part of her family, and they replaced the stone, and they allowed us to take that one. There's no grave to it. It's just a stone. Yep, it's just a stone.
Well, the dog actually alerted to right there, where it's leaned up against the tree.
They hadn't found a body, but the search was far from over. Finally, a promising lead emerged. A few miles away, a man named Kenny, who knew both Mike and Jim, had clues that seemed too important to ignore. Would this clue finally unlock the truth? Or would it be just another piece of the puzzle in this deeply disturbing case? Well, let's find out.
How are you? Look for Mike.
Huh?
Michael Dixon?
What about him?
Looking for him.
He ain't seen him for a couple days.
Sure about that?
Positive.
All right, well, because his car's right there.
I know it is.
Yeah. So let's not do something silly if you're not telling the truth.
Oh, I'm telling the truth.
Okay, so when did he drop his car off?
I guess last night, but I wasn't here. My girlfriend was here that.
Okay, can I get a look at it?
Oh, I don't care.
All right.
Kenny told the officers that Mike had left his car behind, explaining it was due to a transmission fluid leak. But that was all Mike said before taking off again. When deputies glanced through the back window, they spotted a chainsaw, one that Jim's daughter claimed Mike had taken from their house. Mike's mom and stepdad, Denise and Frank Specie, lived just down the street from where he left his car. When investigators headed over to the Specie residence, they not only found what they were searching for, but also began uncovering secrets within the Dixon family, some hidden even from each other.
Mike, there's a Fairfield County's got a warrant for you. You can take that there. Okay? I want you to take a couple hits off that cigarette.
Or you just can't hang it in your mouth, keep smoking it if you want. That'll help you out. Is your dad here? Okay. Is there anybody else here or just your dad?
Dad, my daughter.
Okay.
Now the detectives had Mike Dixon in custody, but not for the reason you'd expect. They initially arrested him on a minor traffic warrant, something unrelated and seemingly routine. But the detectives had much bigger questions in mind, and Mike knew it. They carefully informed him of his Miranda rights, signaling they were about to dig into something far more serious.
You want to talk to me about what's been going on at Jim's house?
They say that his daughter come down a few days ago and said that I had to get out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
He's been gone, I think, since the 5th. And his daughter come saying, oh, I was getting rid of his stuff. I didn't get rid of nothing of his. He was like a dad to me.
So what do you think has happened to Jim?
I'm hoping nothing. I'm hoping he just took off, but I don't know why.
While Mike was being taken in, other detectives shifted their attention to his 18-year-old daughter, Melody. They found her further up the driveway, and it was clear from the beginning that she was nervous. The detectives asked her about her relationship with Jim Whitaker, the man who had mysteriously disappeared. Melody answered carefully, trying to cover her tracks.
Did James say where he was going or anything?
No. He didn't really say where he was going. He was just...
What happened to some of his stuff?
What do you mean?
Like his guns, his TV set, and all that.
Well, the gun was been missing, and I don't know about the TV.
But it wasn't long before someone else had a different story to tell. A man named Kenny, along with his son Jeff, who owned the property where Mike had parked his car, had some shocking details to reveal. They informed the detectives that there were inconsistencies in Melody's story. What exactly had she been hiding? This small crack in her narrative was just the beginning, leading to more alarming secrets.
Mike Dixon,
Did he sell you a TV, a crate, a TV? Yeah.
As they pressed further, the detectives uncovered another peculiar detail: a missing television set. It turned out that one of the missing TVs had been purchased by Kenny. This was just the tip of the iceberg when it came to the troubling secrets Melody was hiding. How many more secrets could there be, and what were they concealing? Investigators continued to press her, hopeful that she might slip up and reveal more.
Do you think that something's happened to Jim?
I think he just evolved because that's what he's been talking about for a while.
Where would he go?
Well, he told me and Dad, he was like, I'm just gonna not be here when you go, and you guys can keep this place because my family don't give a goddamn about me or whatever, so.
By this point, Jim Whitaker had been missing for around 23 days. Melody admitted that she had a rough upbringing and had spent time in foster care. She wasn't supposed to be in contact with her father, Mike, at all. But why was that? The reason would turn out to be stomach-churning, as investigators would soon learn. But for now, they focused on the immediate evidence, like the so-called note Jim had supposedly left behind.
Did you and Jim have a relationship? No?
He wanted one.
You wanted one?
And then when I told him no, he went berserk, and that's what that letter was about.
This note would become an important piece of the puzzle as the investigation continued. Yet even with Jim's absence casting a shadow over the scene, Melody didn't seem particularly focused on him. Her main concern seemed to be her father, Mike.
Is he going to jail? Mike?
Because there's a warrant for you.
This raised suspicions among the detectives. Why was she so protective of her father, rather than showing concern for the missing man? Meanwhile, Mike was transported to the sheriff's office, where detectives continued questioning him about Jim's whereabouts.
But Jim had talked about in the past. Was there anything to indicate that he was going to, that his depression had reached a limit on that day? I didn't think so. Didn't think so? But I mean, if he was going to basically, why would he take a TV? Yeah.
He was evasive, providing only vague answers. But as they dug deeper, they stumbled upon more of Jim's missing property. Among these items was a rifle, Jim's favorite, which had been sold to one of Mike's acquaintances named Tommy on July 6th, just days after Jim disappeared. Tommy had then resold the rifle, but the detectives were quick to track it down. When they spoke to Tommy, he also revealed some unsettling insights into Jim and Mike's strange relationship.
Because, see, Michael beat the shit out of that old man a bunch. Like, yeah, they got in a fight a lot, man. That old man would get high on meth, because that old man was a meth head. And he'd get high on meth and stuff, and him and Michael would get into it, hot and heavy. I mean, he blacked Michael's eyes, and Michael blacked his eyes, too. I mean, it was like they was two fighting married couple. I swear to God, that's what you thought.
The following day, detectives returned to ask Tommy some follow-up questions, and he revealed some unsettling insights into Jim and Mike's strange relationship. This time, he opened up about conversations he'd had with Mike, conversations that hinted at dark secrets involving Melody and Jim. What could Mike have said about his own daughter that was so alarming?
He had said that he had caught his daughter and him in bed. I asked him. I saw my mom, my kids asked him right in my living room 2 days before you guys arrested him. I asked him if he did it. And here's his exact reaction when I asked him. He was like, no, man, I didn't do it like that. Like, eating, like, how you put that? You know when somebody's being sarcastic? Like, you know, like you can see in their voice and hear that, you know, he knows more than what he was saying.
As detectives pieced together testimonies, they grew more concerned, especially after speaking with Jim's neighbors. It seemed the community knew more than they were letting on, adding another layer of mystery to the case.
I guess what makes it look strange for you, Mike, is that you guys continued to live there and never let anybody know that Jim was missing. I mean, why not call the sheriff's office and say, hey, this guy's left, the TV's missing, his gun's missing, and I haven't seen him for a few days. Even though I understand Jim's an adult, but why didn't you go and call us?
I don't know, I should have when I was going to. I asked a few people what they thought
And they said, oh no, Jim might be doing something he don't want the cops to know about. I should have called you.
The investigators' worries about the Dixons deepened, and when they confronted Mike back at the sheriff's office, he finally made a mistake that broke his carefully constructed facade.
I cared about Jim a lot, I did. But I mean, I'm not funny, but he was like my uncle. Mm-hmm.
In a moment of pressure, Mike slipped up and referred to Jim in the past tense. This subtle shift was enough to alert the detectives that they were on to something big. Mike soon confessed to something so appalling that it not only led to his arrest, but also prompted the detectives to bring Melody back to the station for a detailed interview of her own.
How are you?
Good. Yeah.
Okay. Melody, I'd like to take you down to Laurelville and talk with you about your dad. Okay? You okay to go?
You're not under arrest.
You're not under arrest or anything like that. We want to go down and just have a conversation with you in a nice private area.
Once back at the station, Melody was read her Miranda rights, and the detectives didn't waste any time getting down to the heart of the matter. They began probing into the tensions between Jim and Melody, hinting that this might be the key to understanding the entire grim situation.
And what I would like for you to do is talk with us about the incident that occurred with Mr. Whitaker, about what your dad has told us. Are you willing to talk to us?
Do you actually have a recording of him saying that?
Sure do.
Could you check like a recording first and then video to?
I don't have the video with me.
So I basically have to go out online right now.
Well,
I don't know if what you're telling me is correct or not.
wouldn't you want the family to have closure? Do you think that James deserves to be laying out?
It's not good people, in my opinion.
Pardon?
They're not good people, so why would I want them? They're not good people. I don't know.
So you don't care about James?
No, I don't say. Well, he's a bad person.
In what way?
Every way, I have no opinion.
In every way? In what way would that be?
Dad was just trying to protect me.
Why do you say James is a bad person?
Yeah, because we got in front of the house and told Dad he had to leave, but wasn't going to leave. He was screaming. I tried to get the F out, but I had an instruction, like really bad, so I went to the one of the steps to go to the grocery. And he grabbed me. And I was like, what the heck? And he just screamed to Dad, so he would get that out. And once you go, I was like, well, let me leave then, and I took a pull away from him.
Why didn't he want you to leave with your dad?
Because he's sick.
What was it about Jim that Melody didn't want to reveal? The investigators knew she was holding back some of the darkest details, but for now they decided to focus on Mike, who was also giving his version of the story. Mike's narrative did little to clear things up. In fact, it only added to the suspicions swirling around. He eventually agreed to return to the property with the detectives to reconstruct the crime scene.
I told him I was going down the stairs to get my gun, and I went and got my gun.
Come up.
Yep. That's when Melody was coming out of the thing. I could hear them scuffling a little bit.
What were they saying anything to each other?
No, I just heard her kind of like yelling, and supposedly she grabbed like his gun. She said all she remembers is looking down the barrel of it. I heard the safety on his gun click off, and that's when I shot mine. So James saw that your dad was pointing a gun at him?
Maybe not enough reaction time.
He didn't have enough reaction time to do anything? Is that what you're saying?
I was like, not close, not really away.
Couple feet away.
Wasn't close enough that I freaking felt the bullet go by.
I'm right here where I'm standing.
Okay.
And if he would be to come forward towards me a little bit, no, that way, just right there. And if you would have turned if you would have been going to look like, yep, right like that. Right there.
Right there?
Yep, no, right just like that, exactly.
And where did you hit him in his body?
Right there where he's pointing towards his eye.
During this chilling reenactment, he began revealing small yet critical details, confirming that Jim was indeed dead. However, Jim's body was still nowhere to be found, And as for the motive, the evidence hinted at something deeply disturbing occurring behind closed doors, but the exact reasons remained elusive.
He only did what he did because of me.
Back at the sheriff's office, detectives learned even more unsettling facts. Melody's version of events was disturbingly incomplete, omitting the most chilling elements. Still, they had to turn to Mike, hoping he would fill in the missing pieces. He claimed to have the full story, yet each new detail only muddied the waters further.
He talks about how he cleans it up.
Just with bleach.
Bleach. Do you know where he bought the bleach from? Was there bleach at the house?
Yeah.
Did you cover up anything over here? Did you clean anything?
Yeah, I cleaned.
Did you clean up on the wall?
A little bit, and then there was splatter up. You can kind of like right in that way, you can see stuff.
Where was most of the blood?
On the floor.
It was most on the floor.
Yep.
Was there a puddle?
Down there.
Then came one of the most revealing actions of all. In the process of the cover-up, Mike had also rearranged some of the furniture. But surprisingly, Mike wasn't alone. Jim's friend Keith had been unwittingly involved, helping to move furniture without realizing the grisly context. But there were others in on the secrets who knew exactly what had transpired and chose to hide it. As Mike continued the reconstruction, Melody finally began filling in some of the missing details, reluctantly piecing together the horrifying puzzle.
Where was the gun?
The gun was about where my feet are.
Which way was the gun?
Pointing the barrel towards that.
Use that.
This was it. Say, this is the barrel like that. It was right there.
Was it laying on him?
Right there.
So where's the butt of the gun?
Right there.
That's the butt of the gun.
I took when I come up here and I took my hand over that way.
Kicked it out, and then what?
And then I reached down and like I told you, and seen if he had any paws.
Okay. And then what'd you do? Where was Melody?
Over there. Probably about where that baseball bat's at.
Each revelation brought investigators closer to understanding the grim events of that night. But more questions remained. What drove this father-daughter duo to such lengths, and how much of the truth was still hidden? Now, while Melody claimed her father burned her dress, Michael never directly admitted to it. And when the dress was burned is yet another mystery.
We were sitting here just enjoying our 4th of July, and Melody comes walking down the driveway. And she stood there and asked if we had any gas that she could buy from a gas can. And what she was wearing that day, we all noticed that it looked like it had a blood stain on the middle of it.
About that big around.
To get closer to the truth, Jim's financial records were pulled up, where investigators found a strange transaction. His debit card had been used at a gas station on the 4th of July, but there was no way to know if it was Jim making the transaction. Could it have been Michael or Melody using his card? Investigators couldn't confirm it because the gas station footage had already been recorded over, leaving yet another dead end. But Melody's interrogation brought up someone new, someone who might have known about the crime and even lied to cover it up.
Is your family like Frank, or is he married? Are they supporting you? I mean, are they being nice to you at least?
Me and my grandpa.
Your grandpa?
Frank.
Frank? Okay, that's your grandpa. Okay. Have you tried to talk to him about it so that they understand what you're going through?
I mean, yeah, I don't really talk to my grandpa. But the other ones, you can't really trust him.
Michael eventually revealed that he had confided in his stepfather, Frank, about what he'd done. Now, this disclosure could mean serious trouble for Frank, who'd become entangled in a crime he hadn't committed but knew about. So, police set off to the Specie house again.
With that being told, I want you to understand something. I've already talked to Mike. I've already talked to Melody. They both indicated to me that they talked to you and told you of the involvement of James' death, or Jimmy, if that's what you want to call him. When did he tell you this, and how did he tell you this? Was it
right after it occurred, or a day or two afterwards? So
When they come here, I thought he shot at him. I didn't know.
You just said he shot him.
Shot at.
Shot at.
That's all that's the way it was phrased to me.
Okay, and he didn't say, I killed him.
No.
He didn't say,
No.
I buried him, I get rid of the body.
No.
Anything like that.
No. Because that's when I would have gotten a hold of somebody and found out what was going on, because I knew Jimmy years ago.
Did he try to bring a weapon here?
No.
Any kind of gun at all? Handgun, long gun?
Not that I've seen.
Though Frank wasn't immediately implicated, this visit sparked something. The consequences were brewing. It wouldn't be long before things began to unravel. But here's a twist. Michael hadn't given the murder weapon to Frank as everyone assumed.
What happened to Mike's gun?
I don't know this information because.
Did he give it to Frank?
No. I don't even think he's allowed to have guns in the house because he has on disability or something.
He'd handed it off to yet another family member. The police returned to the Specie house for a fourth visit.
No, I didn't do my job. Yes.
What's your name, ma'am?
I'm Tanisha.
You're Tanisha?
No, Denise.
Denise. Oh, I was going to say, Tanisha is an odd name. Different name. What was in the house, Denise?
My husband.
That's
my
Frank.
son.
Is that
John?
John?
John, he's in the shower.
Okay. Can you have Frank come out as well? And I want to talk to you two just for a second, and then get you apprised of what we're doing here.
And by now, Frank likely sensed what was coming.
How about this?
Yeah.
Here's what's happening right now. We are here for a search warrant of your residence. Okay?
Officers made everyone come outside to talk, and tensions ran high. Michael's mother, Denise, was visibly distressed, especially when an officer began to read her Miranda rights.
I've never been through anything like this.
Okay. Listen, this is nothing. This isn't you, you know. Okay?
Okay.
As events unfolded, Michael's brother, John, who had just gotten out of the shower, was also pulled aside. Though he wasn't under arrest, they advised him of his rights.
Essentially, there's only one question that I really need to ask you.
Gun.
Correct. Where is that gun at?
Get it out of my trunk.
It's in your trunk?
Yes, sir.
You know, the question is Michael brought you the gun.
I bought the gun from my brother before any of this ever happened. He kept asking me to borrow it. He wanted to go hunting with it. And then he showed back up with it that morning. I didn't know yet. He just showed up with it. Here's your gun back.
The weapon was found exactly where he said it would be. But he also had more information to share. Something even more unsettling.
This has been brewing. Jimmy and Michael have been threatening to shoot each other for 2 years.
But John chose to remain silent on further questions, pleading the fifth. Yet even with this information, police were still searching for Jim's body and trying to piece together a motive. It was clear that finding either would be far more challenging than anticipated.
What happened then with James' body?
I wasn't part of that. My dad made me go downstairs and go to bed.
So he told you to go downstairs?
Well, he and walked me up downstairs, and because I was like shocked. My niece kept screaming my name, but I wouldn't move. And that's when he grabbed me and brought me downstairs and like helped me in bed and told me, he's like, stay down here for a little while, and I fell asleep.
Finally, Michael provided graphic details of what had happened to Jim, shedding new light on the horror of it all. During the investigation, police discovered a deer sled, a tool commonly used by hunters, but Michael allegedly used it to move Jim's body, a disturbing insight into the extent of the crime.
When you woke up, was the house, was all the blood and everything cleaned up? It was already gone?
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't know where any of that stuff went to?
He said he burned it.
Did you ask him, or did he just tell you?
Well, he told me the night before that he was going to go take care of everything and burn it.
You never actually witnessed how the body was dragged out of the home, how it was removed or anything like that?
No, but he didn't want me to know.
He didn't want you to watch.
He knew once he pulled the trigger that he did that, and he shouldn't have done it.
Melody and Michael both insisted she hadn't helped in cleaning up the crime scene. But did Michael actually manage to cover up everything on his own? Investigators were skeptical. Melody's lies initially misled police. She denied knowing what happened to Jim when asked, leading to her arrest on obstruction charges. While reconstructing the crime scene, Melody and Michael saw each other for the first time since their arrests.
Give a kiss.
Tell me the truth, Melody, don't lie.
They were both brought in for separate interviews. Melody's task? Reconstruct her knowledge of the crime. Yet police were also looking to understand her involvement with Michael on a different level. There were disturbing allegations about her relationship with her father, raising a new and unsettling layer to this case.
Had there been anything going on between you and Jimmy?
No. No.
I need to know. Nothing.
No, he wanted something, but I told him no, and he got mad about it, and I told...
When was that?
Or basically the entire time I've been here.
So the entire time,
He's like...
he'd been hitting on you, wanting you to do things with him.
Yeah.
And you never did.
Mm-hmm.
What about anything between you and your dad? Nothing at all?
No.
Early in the investigation, police had spoken with Jim's family and learned troubling details. What had really been going on between Michael and Melody? To understand further, investigators also reached out to Melody's mother, Brandy.
The Children's Services decided not let Melody go back out because they think there was a possibility he made out with his own daughter. So they kept her in foster care. When she came up here and started visiting me, she wanted to see her dad, but nobody could stop her because she was 18. She started seeing her dad, but I don't know the things he said to her or whatever, but he got her back on drugs again, like meth and all that crap.
What she shared added a deeply upsetting note to the case. She revealed the reasons why Melody had once been placed in foster care and was supposed to be distanced from her father. Brandy claimed there had been multiple Child Protective Services reports documenting the challenges of keeping Michael and Melody apart. But what if there was more to it? Allegedly, Michael's mother, Denise, was aware of these troubling allegations, even going as far as buying lingerie for Melody. Yet there is no concrete evidence to confirm this. Even so, more unsettling revelations followed. Melody's younger sister recounted her own horrific claims.
Whenever we lived out with his mom and dad, I walked in the trailer and Melody and him was under the blanket, but maybe.
You said that happened out at
Frank and
Denise's house? Was that
Yeah.
like a long time ago? Or like...
No, it wasn't. It hasn't even been a year yet. This September's going to be a year. They would always hold hands and all this. And he tried to hold my hand. He was like, "Come on, baby girl, you can hold my hand." I said, "No. Do you want me to beat the out of you?" That's just nasty. I'm not like 2 years old. I'm actually glad he's in jail. He needs to die in jail with all the that he's done.
Friends of the family also began to share disturbing stories. Keith, a family friend of Jim's, told police that he'd witnessed odd behavior between Michael and Melody. On several occasions, they would disappear downstairs together, and Keith would overhear disturbing sounds that hinted at an inappropriate relationship. At one point, Melody had invited Keith to have some fun, which provoked a furious reaction from Michael. It was enough to leave investigators questioning if this twisted relationship had anything to do with Jim's death. As investigators continued piecing together this puzzle, they found themselves grappling with the possibility that this father-daughter relationship might have played a role in the crime. Was Jim caught in a love triangle, with tensions escalating to the point of murder? While retracing the crime scene, Michael gave investigators a chilling walkthrough of the steps he took to cover up the evidence.
So, which way did you drag him down into here? You drug him right through here? And then show me where you laid the body.
Watch your feet and that stuff, buddy. About right here.
His head was about right there. And the feet were down that way. And his head is about where your feet are. Okay. And you say you burnt him 10 to 15 hours?
Yes.
And you were, the whole time you were using wood, sticks, accelerant?
Clothes. Really not. The only time I used any accelerants when I first started it.
He admitted to burning Jim's cell phone, along with multiple spent shells and other evidence. Investigators took him seriously, especially after finding burn sites with bone shards, including a fragment with medical scaffolding consistent with Jim's spinal surgery.
Like, how much stuff was piled on top of him, on top of the body? Probably a foot or two. A what?
Foot or two. So you got a foot or two on top of him. You light him. You throw tires on after it's going. And wood. And you just kept throwing that stuff on there?
For a little bit, not all that long. Then once I got it going, I went in the house.
Okay. Did you stir it around? Like, I mean, fluff him up, let's say, like you'd fluff a fire up?
Once.
You did? Did you see his body then when you fluffed it?
Did you come out and make sure that he was gone? You didn't look at it to see if there's anything left?
No.
Let me see that. That's something. Oh, it appears to be a skull cap. Huh? Yep.
Is that hair right there? Or is it more of that rope type stuff?
That looks more like hair.
That down there?
Right, yeah. Looks like it.
Landry. There's some more.
Yet Michael hinted at another location that needed to be searched. Meanwhile, as the police revisited Frank and Denise's residence, Frank agreed to cooperate, but Denise's irritation was clear.
Alright, so this is what's happening. I have a warrant for your arrest.
What?
Okay, for obstruction of justice, okay, during the investigation, okay?
What?
Alright, so I'm gonna place you under arrest right now, okay? I need you to turn around, put your hands behind your back.
Yeah. Sucks.
As tensions rose, detectives and prosecutors tried to convince Frank to reveal any knowledge he had about the crime. At first, he denied knowing anything, but when shown a video of him admitting it to another officer, his memory suddenly returned.
Why did he tell you that he destroyed the tree? How did that come out?
He just come out and said it because he seemed like he really got into it. He just seemed like it was weird because he seemed like he enjoyed it. And I'm like, you enjoyed something like that?
I need to understand how he got from Jimmy's gone to describing in detail to the point where you think he enjoys destroying human teeth, because that's a big jump. And you've given me no detail here.
Did he say whether or not Jimmy was dead when he knocked the teeth out?
Yeah, he said he was gone. That's what I kept saying. He was gone. He didn't say nothing about him being dead. He's gone.
Investigators brought Michael back out, seeking his help in finding the missing jawbone and teeth that had reportedly been stored separately.
What was it in again? A bowl. I believe it was plastic. Hold on. Like this? You sit underneath this shelf or underneath here?
Underneath right there.
Could it be anywhere else? How big's the bowl?
About as big around as that metal right there.
How high is it?
About 3-4 inches. That wasn't that. It wasn't that? Mm-hmm.
Where could it have gone?
Most of you guys have done moved. I just thought we'd found it by now. I mean, it wasn't hid, did. Just sitting there.
They scoured every corner of the basement piece by piece, yet the jawbone remained elusive. The bones they did find, however, told their own gruesome story, revealing deep cuts that suggested Jim had been dismembered with a chainsaw. The cause of death was still undetermined due to the damage to Jim's remains, but one horrifying realization stood out. The crime was even more gruesome than anyone had imagined. Just when it seemed like all the revelations had come to light, the case took a final twist. Several months after the arrests, one of Melody's cellmates came forward with disturbing allegations. She claimed Melody had confided in her, revealing new details about her relationship with her father.
Well, her and her dad had a relationship of sleeping with each other.
How do you know that?
She said it.
How did she say it?
Her and her dad had, bedroom together, and told her, I was like, that's not right. And she just, acted like it was no big deal. So, every day, we would tell her and ask her, why are you, she's in love with her dad.
Did you have a relationship with James Whitaker?
No.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah.
Did you guys ever kiss?
No.
Not even a kiss.
Another inmate, however, offered a different story, insisting she'd heard Melody describe a relationship with Jim for money.
Did she ever talk about any kind of relationship with him?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
What did she say about that?
Pretty much that she would sleep with them for money.
If these accounts were true, it would alter the understanding of this case entirely. Could a twisted relationship between Melody, her father, and Jim have led to this tragedy? Investigators began to consider if this complex dynamic might have been at the heart of Jim's murder, causing regular arguments between him and Michael. To uncover the truth, detectives obtained a search warrant for Melody's phone, searching for any proof of the relationship.
There's a video on your phone. Police officers retrieved your phone. Looks like there's contact between you and your father. Would that be accurate or no?
Yes.
How long had you had a relationship with Michael?
Well, the first thing that happened was when I got taken out of mom's custody and put in grandma's custody back in 2017.
Melody revealed she had been on meth during every interaction with her father, adding another tragic layer to this already disturbing case. Even worse, these interactions had reportedly taken place under the same roof as Frank and Denise, with Melody's confession uncovering shocking details at every turn.
And how many times after that did it happen when you weren't at your grandmother's? Did that start to happen when you started to live with him and James?
Yeah.
About how many times?
I don't know what I can count. For years of my life, whenever you try to say no, and then men are on top of you and you can't push them off, and then whenever I would tell my dad no, he would stop and he would respect that. So that's why I thought it was okay, because he would always stop. I said no.
You realize it wasn't okay? You know that now? You also realize it wasn't your fault? Because it wasn't okay. It was not okay. It wasn't your fault. He's a grown-ass man and should know better.
In 2021, Michael Dixon was ultimately sentenced to life in prison for murder, with added years for tampering with evidence and engaging in corrupt acts. He won't be eligible for parole until 2070, when he will be 91 years old. Melody, meanwhile, faced 9 years in prison, convicted of obstruction and evidence tampering, and will be eligible for release in 2029. Frank also faced consequences, convicted on an obstruction charge, for which he received probation after time served. Many have expressed deep remorse over Whitaker's passing. The impact of his absence was felt by all who knew him. Yet despite these convictions, many mysteries still linger. What was the real reason behind Jim's murder? And will the full truth ever come out? Until either Michael or Melody chooses to reveal their secrets, some pieces of this tragic story will remain buried in darkness. Now, what are your thoughts on the circumstances surrounding this case? Do you believe justice has been served? Share your opinions in the comments below. And do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more. Imagine watching your entire world fall apart in a matter of seconds. For 9-year-old Andrew Hawkinsmith, that was his reality.
911, where's your emergency?
Someone is robbing at a pawn shop.
Someone's robbing the pawn shop?
And my parents got shot.
Where are your parents?
They're dead on the ground. Come here quickly because I'm afraid.
The call was desperate, and the urgency in young Andrew's voice urged the police into action. They arrived at the scene within minutes, hoping to save 9-year-old Andrew and his baby sister Naomi. What they found was a tragic scene. An unknown assailant had struck the Hawkinsmith family, leaving behind a wave of grief and no clear clues. The attack was so sudden and gruesome that it became one of the most perplexing cases the detectives had ever faced. Andrew Hawkinsmith was living a happy life with his parents, Michael and Angie, and his little sister, 14-month-old Naomi. Michael and Angie's love story had been a sweet one. Michael had fallen for Angie the moment he met her, and from then on, they were inseparable. Angie was his first love, and they were a couple full of joy, deeply committed to each other in their strong religious faith. Michael worked as a part-time youth pastor, and both he and Angie were very active in their local church. They were well known and loved within their community. However, the income Michael earned from his pastoral work wasn't enough to support their growing family. That's when a friend from their church, Pastor Alan Keith, approached Michael with an unexpected opportunity. Pastor Alan Keith was a man of God, preaching throughout Pulaski County every Sunday. But along with his love for God, Pastor Keith had a deep love for something else: gold. His side business of buying precious metals, CDs, videos, and other items through his pawn shops became just as central to his life as his ministry. It was under Pastor Keith's guidance that Michael Hawkinsmith, a devoted father and youth pastor, found himself joining the business. Michael started working at one of Pastor Keith's shops, ABC Gold Games and more. Andrew had always looked up to Pastor Keith, seeing him almost like an uncle. Keith had become a trusted figure in the Hawkinsmiths' lives, and Michael admired him greatly. Though it may have seemed unusual for a pastor to be involved in such a business, Michael accepted the proposition to help manage one of Pastor Keith's pawn shops. It was a way to provide for his family and keep them financially secure. The town saw Michael as a caring pastor and loving father, balancing his duties to his congregation with the more unconventional task of running a pawn shop. No one could have imagined that this quiet life in Danville would be shattered by a tragedy that would forever change the Hawkinsmith family. With his new job at the pawn shop and the recent arrival of baby Naomi, life seemed perfect for the Hawkinsmith family. They cherished their time together, so much so that Michael and Angie decided to homeschool their son Andrew, allowing them to spend even more time as a family. Every day, Andrew would join his parents and little sister at the pawn shop. For him, it was like a second home filled with games, movies, and knickknacks that he adored. To Andrew, the shop was a playground, and he loved being there. But on the morning of September 20th, 2013, everything changed. At 9:17 a.m., a 911 dispatcher in Kentucky answered a call from a terrified young boy. It was Andrew, his quiet voice shaking as he told the operator about a robbery happening at his family's pawn shop. As the dispatcher tried to gather more information, a heart-wrenching sound came through the line, a baby crying. Andrew and his little sister Naomi were hiding, forced to remain silent in the presence of the armed robber still lurking in the shop. The chilling events of that day escalated quickly. After Andrew's desperate 911 call, the operator wasted no time dispatching officers to the pawn shop. The 9-year-old remained on the line, scared and hiding with his baby sister, as the patrol unit rushed to the scene, unaware of the horror awaiting them. Within just 6 minutes, officers arrived at the pawn shop. Finding the door locked, they broke the glass to gain entry, knowing every second mattered. As they stepped inside, the grim reality set in. The first thing the officers saw was a smear of blood in the lobby, sending their adrenaline into overdrive. They knew they were walking into a potentially dangerous situation, with the fear that the shooter might still be inside. Even for experienced officers, nothing could prepare them for what they were about to witness. 3 bodies lay on the floor, confirming their worst fears. Despite the gruesome scene, their mission wasn't over. Guided by the 911 dispatcher, the officers combed the shop until they found the 2 young children, Andrew and his baby sister Naomi, still hiding. A wave of relief washed over them when they saw the siblings were alive and unharmed, though clearly traumatized. The children were quickly taken to the police station for safety. Meanwhile, back at the pawn shop, detectives swarmed the area, beginning the task of piecing together what had happened. The scene was chaotic, with the store selling guns and ammunition, which made it difficult to distinguish between potential clues and everyday items. A forensic scientist carefully examined the bodies. A woman near the register and a man behind the counter. The detectives knew they had a complex case ahead of them. As investigators delved deeper into the crime scene, a trail of blood led them to the 3rd victim, a man lying in the back of the shop. One of the bodies had been carefully moved to a spot out of sight, hidden from anyone peeking through the front door. It was clear this was no random act of harm. The victims had been shot multiple times, even after they were already down. All the detectives could initially determine was that the spent casings came from a .22 caliber weapon. While the investigation unfolded, Andrew's grandmothers, Charlene and Barbara, rushed to the scene, desperate for answers. The sight of police cars and yellow tape filled them with fear. As they got closer to the shop, officers held them back, refusing to let them enter. It was at that moment Charlene broke down, overcome with the terrifying realization that her son and daughter-in-law were likely gone. Her heart sank, unable to comprehend the gruesome reality before her. Both grandmothers were in disbelief, unable to understand why someone would want to take the lives of Michael and Angie, 2 people known for their kindness and generosity. The 3rd victim was 60-year-old Dan Smith, a familiar face at the Hawkins Smith's pawn shop. He was a regular customer who often dealt in buying and selling gold around the area. On the surface, the crime scene suggested a robbery gone terribly wrong. After all, the Hawkins Smith store, being a pawn shop, would naturally attract those looking to steal valuables. But something didn't add up. A crucial detail threw off the robbery theory. Dan's suitcase was found wide open on the counter, still full of cash. The register, too, was untouched, with over $1,000 still inside. If this were a robbery, why hadn't the thief taken any of the money before escaping? It was a strange discovery that left detectives scratching their heads. The wallets of both Mike Hawkins Smith and Dan Smith were also left untouched, further deepening the mystery. As the investigators processed the scene, they began to realize that this wasn't a simple case of a botched burglary. The lack of stolen money hinted at something more sinister. Could the victims have been specifically targeted for reasons other than theft? Detectives couldn't shake the feeling that the crime had a deeper motive. One detective expressed the team's confusion, mentioning that they were wondering what was going on. They questioned whether it was a robbery or a hit, and if so, whether Dan Smith was the intended target. The fact that Dan was a gold buyer who often carried large sums of cash in his briefcase made him an obvious target. His wife later told the detectives that Dan followed a strict routine, traveling the same routes on specific days of the week, which added predictability to his movements. This information led investigators to wonder if the killer had planned the attack with Dan in mind. Could it be that this was no random act of harm, but rather a calculated strike against the gold buyer? Dan Smith had a routine. He'd go to his bank, get the cash, and visit a string of pawn shops, always following the same path. One of his regular stops was Lawson's Jewelers in Harrodsburg, just 19 minutes from the Hawkins Smith's pawn shop. On the day of the murder, Dan walked into Lawson's with his familiar briefcase. He greeted the woman behind the counter, laughing and relaxed, unaware of the tragedy awaiting him just moments later. Less than an hour after leaving the shop, Dan Smith was dead. What puzzled investigators was that no one seemed to notice anything strange. Dan wasn't being followed, and no one was paying him any special attention. Everything appeared normal. This left the detectives questioning their approach. Initially, they had focused on Dan, thinking he might have been the intended target, but that theory was leading them nowhere. The investigation had hit a dead end. There were no suspects, no clear motive, and no leads for any of the victims. The killer was still out there, and the small town was left to grieve. News of the gruesome murders spread quickly, shocking everyone. This kind of harm was unheard of in a place like Danville. 2 innocent children had lost their parents in the most unimaginable way. The whole town was in disbelief as they learned that a young boy had bravely called 911 and shielded his baby sister from the horror unfolding around them. It wasn't just a robbery, it was a heartbreaking tragedy that left a community shattered.
I'm still in haze, still in fog.
Those who knew the family are still trying to make sense of why anyone would murder a youth pastor, his wife, and another man inside this Danville shop.
How do you react in a small town USA like this, where I couldn't tell you the last time someone was murdered?
The Boyle County coroner says husband and wife Michael and Angela Hawkinsmith were killed, along with Daniel Smith of Richmond, Kentucky. What's even more saddening is that friends say the Hawkinsmith's 9-year-old boy called 911 saying his family had been killed. What the little boy did before that is simply heartbreaking.
He grabbed his little sister up and he carried her in the office and he covered her with his body. And, it's just, he's a hero.
The town of Danville was in disbelief, searching for answers after the tragic murders of the Hawkinsmith family and their friend, Dan Smith. Pastor Alan Keith, the man who had introduced the Hawkinsmiths to the pawn business, expressed his heartbreak on social media, mourning the loss of 3 people he cared about deeply. He even mentioned Dan, calling him both a business client and a good friend. The community was shaken, but the most pressing issue remained. The killer was still on the loose. Police shared that the suspect had likely escaped through the garage door at the back of the pawn shop and vanished into an alley, leaving no trace. With no motive or suspect, the case grew colder by the minute. The fear was real. Could Andrew still be a target? Authorities were doing everything they could to protect him and his baby sister, keeping them safe at the police station. Soon the children would be placed under the care of their grandparents, but the town was still haunted by the senseless harm. The police were working tirelessly, but they were stumped, unsure of their next move. Just as they hit a wall, a promising lead finally emerged, a glimmer of hope that could break open the case and bring justice to a town desperate for answers. Once investigators heard the name Kenneth Allen, they knew they had to dig deeper. Who was this man? They discovered that he was involved in the pawn shop business, owning one in Somerset, Kentucky, while also serving as a pastor at a small church in Pulaski County. His congregation adored him, and he was well respected in his community. However, there seemed to be a common thread among those connected to the case. They were all heavily involved in church activities, pastors, ministers, and community leaders. As detectives continued their investigation, they received a tip from a caller who mentioned that Pastor Kenneth Allen had made some strange comments about the case. Curious, the detectives reached out to Pastor Keith. His responses were increasingly odd. He revealed that he had been in Danville on the day of the murders, claiming he drove 43 miles to pick up a prescription for his wife from a pharmacy where he didn't normally shop. When pressed about his whereabouts, he provided a detailed account of his day. As they examined Pastor Keith's life more closely, the investigators began to analyze his financial situation. They discovered a significant detail. He had once been the full owner of the pawn shop where the murders occurred. However, due to mounting debt and financial troubles, he had to give up ownership to Mike and Angie Hawkinsmith, the very people who had taken over the business he once ran. This revelation raised more questions. What was Pastor Keith's real involvement in the tragic events of September 20th? Kenneth Allen felt a deep sense of betrayal. He believed that the pawn shop should have been his. In his eyes, the Hawkinsmiths had taken it right out from under him. As investigators began to piece together the motive, a troubling complication emerged. Pastor Keith claimed he had been at the pharmacy buying medicine for his wife around the time of the murders. If his alibi held up and he was seen on security footage, he could be completely ruled out as a suspect. Determined to verify his story, the The detectives quickly dispatched a team to retrieve the video from the pharmacy where Pastor Keith said he had picked up the prescriptions. If the footage showed him there during the time of the shooting, it would clear him. When the police reviewed the security footage, they spotted Pastor Alan Keith at the pharmacy at 9:24 a.m., just 8 minutes after the murders took place. This timeline made it impossible for him to be in two places at once, casting doubt on their theory and potentially derailing the entire investigation. Despite this setback, there was still one person the police could rely on for more insight into that fateful morning. 9-year-old Andrew, the brave young boy who had called 911 during the chaos. His perspective might hold the key to understanding what really happened that day and could shed light on whether Pastor Keith had any involvement in the tragic events. If Andrew could provide any evidence that Pastor Keith was in the pawn shop and not at the pharmacy when the murders occurred, the case might finally be solved. September 20th began like any other day for the Hawkinsmith family. They arrived at the shop and opened up at 9 a.m. While his parents prepared the store for the day, young Andrew found a corner to play a game. Before long, a familiar face walked in, the gold man, Dan Smith. As Andrew's dad chatted with Dan, his mom, Angie, gently rocked baby Naomi near the register. Dan was a regular customer, and everything seemed normal and routine. Andrew returned to his game, content in the middle of the chatter of the shop. But soon everything changed. Another man entered the store, and Andrew sensed something was off. He looked kind of weird, Andrew recalled. Suddenly, the situation escalated as the intruder pulled out a gun, raising his voice to demand everyone get on the ground. Fear swept through the shop, and without hesitation, everyone complied, dropping to the floor in a panic. Huddled together in a corner, Andrew, his mom, and baby sister Naomi were terrified, their hearts racing as they secretly watched the chaos unfold. Andrew's wide eyes took in the horrifying scene as the intruder fired his weapon 8 times, each shot echoing through the shop and shattering their sense of safety. In that moment, Andrew became a witness to a tragedy that would change his life forever. To 9-year-old Andrew, the strange sounds in the pawn shop felt like darts flying through the air. Amidst the chaos, he looked on, witnessing what would be his father's final moments. His dad pleaded, saying, "Please stop." Then in a heart-wrenching moment, he started rolling around, but eventually he went still. Next, the gunman turned his attention to Dan. In that instant, Angie realized what was about to happen to her and her children. The intruder was moving toward them, and they were next in line. With courage rising within her, Angie turned to her 2 kids, knowing there was only one hiding spot left in the shop. She urged Andrew, "Go to the back with your sister." Following her command, Andrew crawled all the way to the office, placing baby Naomi on the couch beside him. As they huddled together, Andrew heard 4 more gunshots ring out, followed by a heavy silence. Time seemed to freeze as they tried to stay quiet, but fear gnawed at Andrew. He knew he had to peek outside and see if his parents were okay. "I remember crawling over to the doorway," Andrew recalled. Peering out, his heart sank as he saw his mom lying on the floor, surrounded by a puddle of blood. Overcome with devastation, he crawled back to the office, feeling utterly alone. It was now clear that he and Naomi were likely the only survivors. In that moment, Naomi's safety became Andrew's sole focus. He scrambled to the office phone, his small hands shaking as he dialed 911, praying for help before the intruder discovered where they were hiding. The urgency of the situation was unbearable, but Andrew knew he had to act fast to protect his little sister. A 9-year-old boy made a heartbreaking 911 call saying his family had been killed. Before that, his actions showed incredible bravery. Andrew scooped up his little sister and carried her into the office, using his body to shield her from danger. As the details of that day emerged, it became clear just how heroic Andrew was. Both he and his 14-month-old sister were physically unharmed, thanks to his quick thinking and instinct to protect her. His recollection of the events that unfolded helped the police start to unravel Pastor Keith's alibi. All the clues gathered right after the crime began to fall into place. Pastor Keith owned a silver minivan, and security cameras captured a vehicle matching that description, driving around the pawn shop just before and after the shooting. Andrew's secret 911 call had provided a crucial timestamp, showing that it was entirely possible for Pastor Keith to have been at both locations around the same time. Without this evidence, he might have escaped suspicion due to his pharmacy alibi. The timeline from the pawn shop to the pharmacy was credible, creating a path for the investigation. Finally, on October 9, 2013, 19 days after the murders, the police had gathered enough evidence to make an arrest. They obtained 3 warrants, one for Pastor Keith's home, one for his church, and one for his pawn shop in Somerset. An investigator posed as a potential customer to approach Mr. Allen, initiating contact that could lead to significant developments in the case. The momentum of the investigation was shifting, and the truth about that tragic day was beginning to emerge, thanks to the courage of a young boy. The investigation took a significant turn when detectives discovered a box for a threaded device that could be bought online and modified into a makeshift silencer. This find confirmed their suspicions that a silencer was used during the murders, explaining Andrew's description of the high-pitched sound he heard as his parents were shot. Outside the pawn shop, investigators found spent .22 caliber shell casings and a target that had been shot at. This led them to believe that Pastor Keith had practiced shooting before the tragic events unfolded. The .22 shell casings found in Kenneth Keith's pawn shop matched those recovered from the murder scene in Danville, confirming they were fired from the same weapon. The police arrested Pastor Keith in his own pawn shop without any resistance. Families of the Hawkins Smiths and Dan Smith felt a wave of relief knowing that the man they once considered a friend was now behind bars. He had betrayed everything they held dear, but in the end, justice was served. It was shocking to think that someone could commit such horrific acts on a Friday and then stand in front of a congregation, preaching on Sunday morning, especially in front of 2 grieving children. It raised questions about his character. This was not a true pastor. Andrew Hawkins Smith recalled hearing about Keith's arrest on the news. Meanwhile, Dan Smith's daughters were shocked, as their father and Keith had seemed to have a good relationship. Crystal Keeps, Smith's daughter, explained that her father had a previous relationship with Kenneth Allen Keith, noting that he would come in, buy, and sell as they did business together. She expressed disbelief, questioning how someone could commit murders on a Friday and then preach in front of 2 children on Sunday, doubting that such a person could be a real pastor. Keith had faced a potential death sentence for his crimes. However, to spare the victims' families from a long and painful trial, prosecutors offered him a plea deal, which he accepted. The agreement resulted in a life sentence without parole in exchange for his guilty plea. Barbara Hawkinsmith, Michael Hawkinsmith's mother, mentioned that although they all felt they came out on the short end of the stick, she was content, noting that she did not have to answer for what Keith had done, as he would have his own demons to deal with. Andrew Hawkinsmith expressed gratitude for what he still had in life, reflecting that, in a way, it felt like he was living through his parents' life, or at least a reimagined version of it. He said his parents would always live on within him, demonstrating his strength and resilience as he carried on their legacy. Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys soon. August 31st, 1985. Chaos erupted in East LA as a mob chased down a wild-eyed man in a battered jacket, Richard Ramirez. He had just been recognized as the Night Stalker. People yelled, threw things, and tackled him to the ground. When the police arrived, he was bloodied, beaten, and scared.
What's your name? Huh? What's your name? 11.
What on earth is happening? How did Richard Ramirez, one of the most terrifying killers in history, end up here, helpless on the street? Let's just rewind to the very beginning.
What do you want the world to know about you?
The world has been fed many lies about me. I have read very few truths.
Who are you?
Just a guy. Just a guy. That is all I care to say, really.
Let's take it back to where it all began. Richard Ramirez's early life. It's crazy how such an infamous figure started out as just another kid, right? But Richard's childhood was far from normal. Born in El Paso, Texas in 1960, he was the youngest of 5 siblings in a family with a lot of issues. His father, Julian, was a former policeman turned railway worker who had a really explosive temper. The guy would come home furious, taking it out on Richard and his siblings. There was yelling, there were beatings. Just imagine the toll that took on a young kid. From a young age, Richard was always trying to escape, trying to get away from the chaos. And then there was Mike. Now, Mike might have seemed like a lifeline at first. He was Richard's older cousin, a Vietnam veteran who Richard idolized. Mike had stories, wild stories, about the war. He wasn't exactly telling bedtime stories, though. Mike was a decorated Green Beret. But what he did during the Vietnam War was beyond horrific. And you know, when you're a kid, you look up to the people around you, especially when you're feeling lost. Mike gave Richard the attention he was craving, but there's always a but, isn't there? The way he influenced Richard was anything but healthy. Mike was not your typical war vet. Instead of being a role model in the traditional sense, Mike exposed Richard to some really dark, twisted stuff. At just 12, Richard was exposed to things no kid should ever see. Mike would sit down with him and show Polaroids of Vietnamese women he had tortured, assaulted, and killed. These weren't just battlefield snapshots. They were some gruesome images of women tied to trees, assaulted and mutilated. He didn't only show those pictures but bragged about them. The way he told those stories, you could tell he took pride in what he did. And Richard wasn't repulsed at all but was fascinated. He absorbed everything. He wasn't just idolizing Mike, he was learning from him. Mike taught him military skills like stealth and kill techniques. Things were no better at home. His father's punishments weren't any better either. It's no wonder he kept getting back to Mike. And Richard, still a kid at the time, soaked it all in. Now, I'm not saying Uncle Mike is the reason things spiraled the way they did, but let's just say he planted some seeds that no one ever imagined would grow into something so monstrous. As Richard got older, he started to mimic Mike in a lot of ways. And here's the sad part. He never really had anyone else to turn to. His mom was a devout Catholic, but she wasn't exactly a strong force in his life. His dad, still raging, still abusive, still creating a home environment Richard couldn't stand. So where did Richard run when things got too rough? Back to Uncle Mike, again and again. By the time Richard was 14, things got even darker. This is when he started using LSD. He was using it frequently, and it brought him and Mike even closer. They bonded over drugs and alcohol, and during these sessions, Richard started to really dive into bad things. And it wasn't just casual, he was all into it. His mind was getting consumed by savage fantasies. Things like murder, mutilation, and weren't thoughts anymore. They were blending with his sexuality most terrifyingly. Richard's teenage years were a mess. He started acting out, skipping school, getting into trouble. You'd think maybe someone would have stepped in at some point and tried to help him out, but no one did. His father, of course, wasn't about to change, and the only person Richard felt any connection with was the one person who was pulling him further into the dark. It's heartbreaking when you think about it. Richard was just a kid at one point, just a boy trying to escape the pain of his own home, looking for guidance and finding it in all the wrong places. He never had a chance to grow up healthily, to understand the difference between right and wrong the way most of us do. Instead, he was molded by the worst possible influence. While still at school, Richard took a job at a local Holiday Inn. He discovered that his master key gave him access to all the rooms, and at first he used it for theft. When he realized that he was able to get away with it, he continued doing that. Those little thefts just made him more desperate, and just like that, his official hunt began. The first thing he dared to do was to try to rape a woman in her hotel room. Her husband walked him and caught him in the act. But even then, he didn't face any consequences. Then came the real turning point. At 15, Richard stumbled upon something so dark, something he could never unsee. There was no going back after that. On May 4th, 1975, Mike shot and killed his wife, Jessie, right in front of him. But Richard wasn't traumatized at all. Instead, it intrigued him. Mike was later found guilty of the murder by reason of insanity, and it was all chalked up to PTSD from his time in war. So he was sent to a mental hospital instead of prison. Richard dropped out of high school in the 9th grade, just before the school year ended, and became more isolated than ever. After leaving school, he moved in with his older sister Ruth and her husband Roberto. Now Roberto wasn't much better than Mike. He was a peeping Tom, and he'd take Richard along his late-night outings, spying on women through their windows. And when Mike got out of the mental hospital in 1977, he joined them. So now you've got Richard, Mike, and Roberto. 3 guys creeping around at night. It's disturbing, to say the least. By the time Richard turned 22, he left Texas behind and moved to California, where things would only get worse. He would bounce between San Francisco and Los Angeles, and this is where his cocaine addiction really took off. And with addiction comes desperation. The crime, the drugs, the obsession with bad things. It all kept building. His dark fantasies and real-life actions were blurring together, and there was no turning back. The darkness had taken hold of him completely, and he wasn't going to let go. And once it began, it never rested. Richard never stopped. After moving to California, things spiraled fast for Richard. His first known murder happened on April 10th, 1984. A 9-year-old girl in San Francisco. She was just playing in her apartment building's basement when Richard attacked her. He attacked her and hurt her badly, then cruelly killed her by slashing her throat. It was horrifying. In fact, it wasn't until years later, through DNA evidence, that the police could link him to the crime. And well, it was just the beginning of what would become a murder spree. Fast forward to June 28, 1984. This was when his killing spree officially began. The victim this time was a 79-year-old widow named Jenny Vinsow. She was asleep in her LA apartment when Richard broke in through an open window and attacked her, stabbing her repeatedly before slashing her throat so deeply that she was nearly decapitated. He ransacked her apartment and assaulted her dead body. On March 17, 1985, Richard found his next victim, Maria Hernandez, in California. She was a 22-year-old woman living in a suburban neighborhood. She was just coming home from work when Richard followed her inside. As she turned to close the garage door, he pulled out a .22 caliber handgun and shot her in the face. But Maria, in a freak stroke of luck, survived. In the chaos, she managed to escape and call for help. But Richard was not done. He walked inside and found Maria's roommate, Dale Okazaki, hiding behind the counter. He shot her and killed her. Just like that, 2 lives were forever changed. But the terror didn't stop there. Only an hour later, Richard struck again, targeting 30-year-old Cy Leon. He pulled her out of her car in Monterey Park and shot her twice before driving off. 3 attacks in a single night. The news didn't take any time to spread, and fear began gripping the city. But Richard? Oh, he was just getting started. Just 10 days later, on March the 27th, 1985, he struck again. This time, he broke into the home of Vincent Zazzara and his wife Maxine in California. He first shot Vincent in his sleep before moving on to Maxine, who was awake and terrified. She tried her best to fight back, even managing to grab a shotgun. But the gun wasn't loaded, and that only enraged Richard. What he did next was beyond cruel. He stabbed her repeatedly, gouged her eyes out, and placed them in a jewelry box before fleeing the scene. It was pure evil. By now, the press had dubbed him the Night Stalker, and LA was in a state of panic. The randomness of his attack was what made it so terrifying. There was no pattern. He targeted just everyone, men and women, young and old, rich and poor. No one was safe. No one knew who was next. On May 14, 1985, Richard broke into the home of Bill Dowey and his disabled wife, Lillian. He shot Bill in the face, then beat him unconscious and moved on to Lillian. He tied her up, her, and demanded she tell him where their valuables were. Bill, despite being shot, somehow managed to crawl to the phone and call for help before he died. Lillian somehow managed to survive. Richard continued his spree with a level of cruelty that only escalated with each crime. On May 29, 1985, he broke into the home of Mabel and her sister Florence in Monrovia, California. He bludgeoned both women with a hammer before using an electrical cord to shock them. To make it worse, he used lipstick to draw pentagrams on their bodies in the walls of their home. Ma Bell died from her injuries, but Florence miraculously survived, though severely injured. June 1985 saw even more bloodshed. On June 2nd, Richard attacked Carol Kyle in Burbank. He broke into her home, tied up both her and her 11-year-old son, and raped her while her son was locked in a closet. He then left them alive, which was rare for him, but the psychological damage he caused was profound. Not long after that, on July 2nd, 1985, Richard attacked again. This time it was the home of Mary Cannon in Arcadia. He entered her home, beat her, and used a knife to kill her, and as if that wasn't enough, just 2 days later, he broke into the home of Whitney Bennett in Sierra Madre. This time he used a tire iron to bludgeon her. He tried to strangle her with a telephone cord, but somehow she survived when the phone cord sparked, and Richard panicked, thinking it was divine intervention. Whitney lived, but the trauma of that night haunted her. As July continued, so did Ramirez's attacks. On July 7th, he attacked Joyce Nelson in Monterey Park. He stomped her to death, leaving behind a footprint from his Avia sneakers. That same night, he broke into the home of Sophie Dickman. He assaulted her, but left her alive, warning her not to tell anyone what happened. At this point, the entire state of California was on high alert. Ramirez's face was still unknown, but his actions was unmistakable. People were terrified, locking their doors and windows, afraid to sleep. He was still not ready to stop yet. On July 20th, 1985, Richard broke into the home of Maxon and Layla Knighting in Glendale, shooting and killing them both. Later that same day, he drove to Sun Valley, where he broke into the home of Chinarong and Somkid Kovananth. He shot and killed Chinarong, Somkid, and demanded cash and jewelry before fleeing the scene. With the pressure mounting and police closing in, Richard fled to the San Francisco Bay Area. But he couldn't stop. On August 18, 1985, he broke into the home of Peter and Barbara Pan. He shot Peter in the head while he slept, then beat and Barbara before shooting her too. And just like with the Zasaras, he used lipstick to draw a pentagram on the wall, leaving his signature satanic symbol behind. Then on August 24, 1985, Richard was back in Los Angeles. He broke into the home of Bill Carnes, 30, and his fiancée Inez Erickson, 29. He shot Bill in the head 3 times, but somehow, miraculously, Bill survived. He then raped Inez and left her alive. But this time, things were different. Inez got a good look at him, and she was able to give the police a solid description. After surviving one of the most terrifying nights of her life, Inez, despite everything she had been through, managed to give investigators a detailed description of her attacker. She described Ramirez's face, his hair, his clothes, everything. Her memory was sharp, and this was the first time police had a solid lead on the man behind the Night Stalker murders. But there was more. The police were also working with physical evidence. At the Romero house, where Ramirez had also struck, they had found a footprint that perfectly matched the unique Avia sneakers Richard had been wearing during his attacks. This was a big break, but the real game changer came on August 28, 1985, when they found the stolen Toyota he had been driving. The car was abandoned in Koreatown, Los Angeles. Now Ramirez thought he had been smart. He carefully wiped down the entire car, trying to erase every single trace of his presence. But of course, he made one crucial mistake. Somehow, a single fingerprint was left on the rearview mirror. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Investigators sent the print in for analysis, and here's where things got a little lucky. At the time, the police had recently installed a new fingerprint identification system. This system had the records of criminals born after January 1, 1960, which conveniently included Richard Ramirez, who was born just 2 months after that cutoff date. The print was run through the system, and in what was described as a near miracle, it matched perfectly with Richard's record. Now that police knew who they were dealing with, it was time to let the world know. On August 29, 1985, law enforcement held a press conference and made a bold move. They released a mugshot of Richard Ramirez from a 1984 arrest for auto theft. The picture was blasted across every major news outlet, and the message was clear. We know who you are now, and soon everyone else will. There will be no place you can hide. It was a bold statement, and the hunt for Ramirez was on. The public was now on high alert, and people all across California were on the lookout for the faces they had seen on their TV screens. And this brings us to the final day, the day of Richard Ramirez's capture. August 30th, 1985, was a day that no one would forget. Ramirez, completely oblivious to the fact that he had become the lead story on every major newspaper and television station across California, decided to hop on a bus to Tucson, Arizona. He was planning to visit his brother, thinking it would be just another regular day. But his brother wasn't even home. So frustrated and clueless about the storm brewing back in Los Angeles, he headed back early the next morning on August 31st, 1985. Now the law enforcement agencies had been expecting Ramirez to make a run for it. They were staking out bus terminals in hopes of catching him trying to flee. Richard casually strolled right past the officers, completely undetected. They had no idea the man they were hunting had just brushed shoulders with them. Richard, thinking he was still in the clear, decided to get into a convenience store in East LA. As he wandered through the aisles minding his own business, a group of elderly Hispanic women suddenly recognized him. They whispered nervously, calling him El Matador, the killer. The fear in their voices must have hit him like a punch to the gut, because right then, he saw his own face on the front page of the newspaper. The headline read, Invasor Nocturno, Night Stalker. Panic set in, and Ramirez bolted out of the store. He ran across the Santa Ana freeway, no doubt in full survival mode, trying to figure out his next move. Desperation took over. He spotted an unlocked Ford Mustang and figured he could carjack it and make a break for it. But before he could even get comfortable in the driver's seat, two men, Faustino Piñon and Jose Burguan, dragged him out of the car. It wasn't over for Ramirez just yet. He took off running again, sprinted across the street, and tried to steal car keys from a woman named Angelina De La Torre. Her husband, Manuel De La Torre, was watching the whole thing. Now, Manuel wasn't about to let this man take his wife's car. He grabbed a fence post and cracked Ramirez over the head with it. A group of over 10 residents, including Jose Burgoyne's sons, formed a mob and started chasing Ramirez through the streets. The residents of Boyle Heights had no idea that the man they were hunting down was the Night Stalker himself, but they knew he was dangerous, and they were not about to let him get away. As Ramirez ran down Hubbard Street, the mob finally caught up with him. They beat him relentlessly, pounding on him with everything they had. It was brutal. But considering the horror he had inflicted on so many innocent people, it felt like justice was finally catching up with him. By around 8 a.m., police were called to the scene. The report came in as a disturbance, with little detail, but when the officers arrived, they couldn't believe their eyes. There, lying in the street, was Richard Ramirez, the man who had haunted California for months, beaten to a pulp by an enraged group of citizens. The police took him into custody, and just like that, the reign of the Night Stalker was over.
At that time, I really didn't understand until when we had the conference and, all of a sudden I was presented with all the awards and gifts.
Jury selection for this highly anticipated trial kicked off on July 22nd, 1988. In his first court appearance, he strolled in, lifted his hand in the air, and there was a pentagram drawn on his palm. He grinned and yelled out, "Hail Satan!" But it wasn't all theatrics. On August 3rd, 1988, the Los Angeles Times reported that some jail employees overheard Richard plotting to kill the prosecutor. He was allegedly trying to get a gun smuggled into the courtroom to shoot him in the middle of the trial. Naturally, the courtroom security went into overdrive. Metal detectors were installed, and everyone entering the building was searched thoroughly. No one was taking any chances. But on August 14th, the trial was suddenly interrupted. One of the jurors, Phyllis Singletary, didn't show up for court that morning. The tension in the courtroom rose, and soon after the devastating news came in, Singletary had been found shot to death in her own apartment. People started to whisper, had Richard somehow orchestrated her murder from behind bars? Could he really have that much reach even while locked up? Every juror was scared, wondering if they could be next. But as it turned out, Ramirez wasn't behind Singletary's death. The sad truth was that she had been killed by her own boyfriend, who then took his own life with the same gun. The alternate juror who replaced Singletary was so freaked out that she refused to return to her home. fearing for her own safety. Despite all the chaos, the trial eventually moved forward, and on September 20th, 1989, the verdict came in. Richard was convicted on 43 charges. That included 13 counts of murder, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. Every crime that had haunted California for over a year now had a name, a face, and a conviction behind it.
To that date, please.
Some dates that she has to go to the judge.
Then came the penalty phase on November 7th, 1989. And the outcome? Richard Ramirez was sentenced to death in California's gas chamber. But Richard showed no remorse. Instead, he made a statement to the court saying, "Big deal. Death always went with the territory. See you in Disneyland." The entire trial of the Night Stalker ended up costing $1.8 million, making it the most expensive murder trial in California's history at the time. But of course, Ramirez wasn't just sitting quietly in prison, waiting for his day to come. Oh no, he was busy making friends. In fact, while he was awaiting trial, he reportedly met actor Sean Penn. Penn was in jail for 33 days back in 1987 for reckless driving and assaulting an extra on the movie Colors. Richard sent him a letter as a fellow inmate, but Penn wasn't having any of it. He wrote back saying he had zero sympathy for Richard and hoped he'd die in the gas chamber. But here's where things get weird. By the time the trial wrapped up, Ramirez had somehow managed to attract fans. Yes, fans. People were writing him letters, and some even went to visit him.
They are the women in black, admirers of Richard Ramirez.
Why were you in the courtroom today?
I just wanted to see what he looked like. I think he's cute.
This woman, who gave her name only as Paige, calls herself a Satanist. She says Ramirez has written letters to her and that she's talked with him in jail.
Everyone makes him look so bad, but I know that he's a nice person because I've met him, and I know.
He's convicted of 13 murders.
I know. But he's really a nice guy. It's very out of the usual. It's very out of the norm to be able to do that for a certain amount of time and length, a period of time, and get away with it.
One of those admirers was Doreen Leoy, who started writing to him in 1985, just after his arrest. She wrote him almost 75 letters during his time in prison. Richard took this to the next level by proposing to her in 1988, and on October 3, 1996, the two got married right there in San Quentin State Prison. Doreen was so dedicated to Richard for years, she even claimed she would kill herself if he were ever executed. However, by the time of his death, their strange love story had come to an end, and Richard was engaged to a 23-year-old writer. It's honestly mind-boggling how someone like Richard could still have people lining up to be part of his life after everything he did. Fast forward to August 7, 2006. By this point, Ramirez was still sitting on death row. His first round of state appeals didn't go his way, and the California Supreme Court upheld both his convictions and his death sentence. Then on September 7th, the court denied his request for a rehearing. Basically, the legal system had had enough of Ramirez and was ready to let justice run its course. He kept filing appeals one after the other, all while sitting on death row. But on June 7, 2013, Richard Ramirez died. Not from the gas chamber, but from complications related to B-cell lymphoma. He passed away at Marine General Hospital in California. At the time of his death, he was also suffering from chronic substance abuse and a long-standing hepatitis C viral infection. In the end, his body went unclaimed and it was cremated, an almost anticlimactic end to the Night Stalker saga. Richard Ramirez remains a figure of fascination in popular culture, with movies, documentaries, and TV shows keeping his terrifying legacy alive. From Netflix's Night Stalker series to countless true crime podcasts, his story still haunts many. And that was it, the terror of the Night Stalker. But what do you think makes someone a true monster? And what drives some to idolize a monster? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys soon.
Is he alive? He's not? Oh, good. Oh, thank you.
What drives a mother to the brink of despair, leading her to commit an unthinkable act?
Boom, boom, boom.
In the case of Cynthia Gidabaka, the events that unfolded reveal a chilling tale of abuse, betrayal, and a desperate fight for survival. What were the hidden truths that led to that fateful moment? And could the horrors her daughter faced have been the catalyst for Cynthia's desperate actions? Stay with us as we delve deep into the heart of a case that raises more questions than answers. Cynthia Gidabaka gained the unsettling nickname, the Killer Grandma. The combination of killer and grandma might seem strange at first. After all, we don't usually associate grandmothers with such violent acts. However, this case is shocking for many reasons, especially with one of the most bizarre police interviews ever. Cynthia was born on February 11, 1951. Not much is known about her early life, but we do know that at the time of the events in 2014, she was living with her daughter, Laura Salinas, and son-in-law, Gayward Estacio. Laura and Jayward had been married for 13 years and had 2 children, a 14-year-old boy and a 13-year-old girl. The household was crowded with Cynthia and 5 other family members, including Gayward's 2 sons from a previous marriage, one of whom was 18 and also lived at home. As you can imagine, Cynthia's household is bustling with activity, housing 3 generations and 3 teenagers. Yet despite the chaos, they reside in a stunning home in Fullbrook, California, just outside Los Angeles. This upscale house is nestled in a gated community filled with expansive properties, winding roads, and beautifully manicured lawns. The whole area has a luxurious feel. You can imagine the beauty of the area, where the houses are big and located on peaceful streets, showing a life of wealth. In 2001, shortly after Laura and Gayward got married, they found themselves in an unexpected situation. Laura's mother, Cynthia, moved in with them. While this is not the ideal setup for newlyweds, they took Cynthia in because her health was declining after she suffered a stroke. This stroke impacted Cynthia's speech and balance, and she developed a gait disorder, which means she had trouble walking properly. Fortunately, their fancy house had a granny flat where Cynthia could live. This arrangement was great for her because it gave her some independence while keeping her close to Laura, who could help her if needed. However, Cynthia didn't live with them full-time. She often spent time with other family members. This way, everyone could take turns caring for her and avoid feeling overwhelmed. Laura and Gayward had busy lives. They were juggling taking care of Cynthia and managing their own family, which included 3 teenagers. While we couldn't find out exactly what Laura did for work, Gayward was a real estate agent, a rugby coach, and a military reservist. His military background influenced his coaching style, which was known to be strict and organized. Gayward was also tough on his sons, pushing them to achieve their best. They felt his tough love approach came from a caring place, but it was not the easiest environment to live in. One of his sons mentioned that, although Gayward worked hard for the family and community, he could be challenging to get along with. With Gayward's strict parenting style and Cynthia's presence, tensions in the household were heightened. 3 generations living under one roof is already complex, and the pressure from Gayward's high expectations only added to the stress. This complicated family dynamic set the stage for the events that would unfold later. Now, Cynthia was quite different from Gayward in terms of personality. While Gayward was organized and structured, Cynthia was laid back, charismatic, spontaneous. Despite their differences, both were strong-willed and had a knack for speaking their minds. This often led to clashes, especially when they disagreed about politics or household matters. A significant source of tension arose over how Gayward was raising his children, as Cynthia believed he was too strict and used military-style discipline, which she thought was inappropriate for kids. But their issues went beyond just differing opinions. Cynthia was convinced that Gayward was abusive toward Laura and the children. She noticed bruises on Laura's arms and suspected Gayward was responsible. This concern heightened the friction between Cynthia and Gayward, as they frequently argued about parenting styles. Another major point of contention was Cynthia's smoking habit. She smoked a lot, but Gayward had strict rules about smoking in the house, wanting to protect his children from secondhand smoke. Cynthia sometimes went outside to smoke, but this still annoyed Gayward. In a bizarre response, Gayward would spray her with a hose when she smoked in the garden. He claimed it was a joke, saying things like, "If I see a fire, I need to put it out," implying that her smoking was a fire hazard. However, this was not a one-time occurrence. It happened repeatedly, which was particularly harsh considering Cynthia was elderly. Laura often found herself caught in the middle of their arguments. As Geward's wife and Cynthia's daughter, she faced pressure from both sides. Cynthia didn't hold back when it came to expressing her dislike for Geward, often sharing her feelings openly with Laura. This complicated family dynamic created a tense living situation filled with constant conflict, making it hard for everyone involved to find peace in their home. Cynthia had always told her daughter how much she disliked her son-in-law and how she thought he was evil. The arguing and tension between them had been ongoing for a while, but things took a serious turn in January 2014. This was when Geward hit one of the children, which made Cynthia snap. It pushed her to the point where she thought about killing him. To prepare for this drastic decision, she went to a shooting range to practice and buy bullets. At that time, Cynthia had been planning to visit her niece, but after witnessing Geward's violent behavior, she canceled the trip. She felt it was essential to stay with Laura and the kids to protect them from Geward. As February approached, Cynthia remained alert, keeping a close watch on him. The night before the significant event, Cynthia and Laura were watching TV in the granny flat where Cynthia lived. Suddenly, one of the children ran in, crying and asking Laura, "Why do you hate me so much to let Dad hurt me like this?" This heartbreaking moment showed the family's distress. Geward was downstairs shouting and swearing at the child, trying to get them to come back. Later that night, Geward broke the child's computer as punishment, which infuriated Cynthia and was likely the final straw for her.
So mean to me and all of them.
He's mean to everybody?
Yes, he is.
The next day, February 11th, 2014, was Cynthia's birthday. Laura came in to wish her a happy birthday, promising to take her out for a nice lunch, and even gave her money for gambling, as Cynthia's niece planned to take her to a casino. Cynthia had just woken up and seemed happy, but after Laura left, it was just Cynthia and Geward alone in the house, setting the stage for the unfolding drama. On Cynthia's birthday, Laura and Geward's daughter had a spelling bee at school, and both of them planned to attend together. When it was time to leave, Cynthia came down from her granny flat, dressed in an orange-red skirt and an LA Chargers football shirt. However, Geward was not pleased with her outfit. He insulted Cynthia, saying she looked ghetto and like a hobo, laughing at her. This hurt Cynthia deeply, especially on her birthday. Upset, she turned to walk away, but Geward grabbed her, continuing to mock her and belittle her.
Says, you can't go like that because it looks like you're ghetto in this.
At that moment, Cynthia snapped. She went back to her bedroom, opened her bedside drawer, and pulled out a gun. She headed downstairs, where Geward was outside doing laundry with his back turned. Without hesitation, Cynthia began shooting at him. Geward fell but wasn't fatally injured. He tried to fight back, but Cynthia kept shooting until she ran out of bullets. At this point, Geward had been shot 5 times and was on the ground, struggling to move. Incredibly, instead of fleeing, Cynthia walked to her car to reload her gun, which took some time since she usually walked with a stick. This entire attack unfolded slowly and methodically. When she returned, Geward was attempting to crawl back toward the house. Shockingly, he was still alive after being shot 5 times. Cynthia resumed firing at him until she ran out of bullets again, leaving blood everywhere. By this time, Geward had been shot 10 times. Once more, Cynthia ambled back to her car to reload. This bizarre, drawn-out attack showcased her determination and rage, as she continued targeting Geward with little regard for the severity of his injuries, underscoring a tragic and chaotic confrontation. The brutality of Cynthia's attack escalated as she reloaded her gun for the 3rd time. Remarkably, Geward managed to crawl back into the house, reaching the kitchen and locking the door. Despite his injuries, he found the strength to secure himself inside. However, this did not stop Cynthia. She shot at the door, quickly blasting the lock off, and entered the kitchen to find Geward on the floor. Continuing her assault, Cynthia fired again until she ran out of bullets. After finishing her barrage, she coldly remarked, "That ought to do it," before heading back to her car and driving away. This violent confrontation lasted an astonishing 10 minutes. While it might seem short, it provided enough time for Cynthia to reflect on her actions and reconsider stopping. In total, she fired 15 bullets, 3 aimed at the kitchen door and 12 that struck Geward.
You got your gun from your purse, and then what happened?
Went and shot him. Wasn't enough.
Did he say anything to you?
Grandma, I love you. No.
He said that to you?
Yeah.
After you shot him, he said, Grandma, I love you?
Yeah. God damn.
Did you check to see if he was dead?
I didn't care.
The attack was far from quiet. Even though their house was in a big residential area, the sound of gunshots could be heard all around the neighborhood at around 8 a.m. Numerous 911 calls poured in from startled neighbors. One caller reported hearing several gunshots and a man's voice crying out for help. Another described the chaotic scene, noting the gunfire and a figure screaming in distress. The urgency in their voices was noticeable as they relayed the unfolding tragedy to dispatchers. Despite these frantic calls for help, the police did not arrive in time to prevent the violence. When they finally entered the house, they found Geward on the kitchen floor, surrounded by a gruesome scene of blood. Cynthia's actions after the tragic event were shocking. Geward had been shot more than 10 times, and sadly he was pronounced dead at the scene when the police arrived. The authorities immediately began their investigation, eager to understand what had happened in the home. They needed to contact the family to deliver the devastating news, but they also aimed to locate each family member to rule them out as potential suspects, knowing that most murders involve someone close to the victim. The first person they sought was Geward's oldest son from a previous marriage. At 18, he was a recovering drug addict, and there were concerns about a possible fight with Geward. However, he was quickly ruled out as a suspect. The police then turned their attention to Cynthia, but they couldn't find her. When they asked Laura about her mother's whereabouts, Laura provided a few places where Cynthia might be found. At that point, the police didn't suspect Cynthia. They believed she could also be a victim or might be injured or missing. Ironically, instead of fleeing or hiding, Cynthia was taking part in her birthday celebrations. She first visited a liquor store to buy cigarettes, treating herself to a better brand because it was her special day. Next, she headed to Denny's, where she enjoyed her favorite breakfast of bacon and eggs. Despite the horrific events that had just unfolded, Cynthia had no intention of letting anything ruin her birthday. She had originally planned to go to the casino with her niece, but instead decided to go alone. After her meal, she spent 2 hours gambling, blissfully unaware of the police investigation unfolding in the background. Cynthia's routine continued as she stopped by her favorite coffee shop for a treat, completely detached from the gravity of her actions. It was astonishing that the police had not yet tracked her down, considering she was sticking to her usual habits and visiting the very places Laura had suggested. Laura had indeed provided the police with all the possible locations where her mother might be, and the coffee shop was likely one of those spots. The police finally arrived at 6 p.m., a full 10 hours after the murder took place. Strangely enough, Cynthia was in a cheerful mood when the police confronted her. It's confusing how someone could be so jolly while being arrested for such a serious crime. She greeted them almost as if she were surprised to see them, with a carefree attitude that was unsettling given the circumstances. During her questioning, the police began to lay out the details of the tragic event at the house, revealing that Laura's husband had been killed. Cynthia played dumb, faking ignorance about the situation. Her responses were almost theatrical, as she acted surprised when the police mentioned the death. At one point, she even tried to cry, as if to invoke sympathy. The officers pressed her about her opinion of Geward. When asked, she responded with a dismissive attitude, indicating that she didn't like him and suggesting he was unkind to everyone. The police, recognizing that she was not entirely cooperative, changed their tactics to encourage her to open up. As the conversation continued, Cynthia became increasingly confident, revealing more about her feelings toward Geward and her actions.
So what did you think of him? Okay, and why do you say that?
That's the big thumbs down. You didn't like him.
It was during this exchange that one officer suggested, "It sounds like someone needed to stop him." This seemingly innocuous comment triggered a shift in Cynthia. She boldly declared that she had indeed stopped him, essentially confessing to the murder. Her behavior suggested she felt a twisted sense of justification for her actions. When pressed about Geward's status, she glibly remarked that he must be dead, almost as if she hoped he was.
Did anybody try to stop him?
Can't stop him.
It sounds like somebody had to stop him, or
I did. I did. I was guilty.
Okay. Somebody had to stop him.
I did.
Okay, it's okay.
Is he dead?
You tell me.
Gotta be dead.
You think he's dead?
I hope so.
It became clear that Cynthia believed she was being viewed as a hero for her actions rather than a criminal. Cynthia's reaction to the confirmation of Gieward's death was nothing short of shocking. She repeatedly asked if he was dead, and when the officer confirmed it, her response was chilling. She expressed relief and even gratitude, exclaiming, "Oh, good, 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 good." Her lack of remorse was evident as she boldly stated she would do it again without hesitation. This moment was unsettling, making it hard to remember that she had just confessed to murder.
Is he alive? He's not? Oh, good, 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 good. Oh, thank you. Boom, boom, boom.
Adding to the unusual nature of the situation was the fact that her family, including Laura and her grandchildren, were watching the interview through a glass panel. Can you imagine witnessing your grandmother confess to such a horrifying act? It must have been incredibly painful for them. After the interview, the police allowed family members to visit Cynthia one by one. Laura was visibly devastated, crying uncontrollably upon learning that her mother had killed her husband. Some family members embraced Cynthia, but her youngest granddaughter, who was just out of view of the camera, refused to hug her, tearfully stating, "You just killed my dad." This heartbreaking moment showed the horrific impact of Cynthia's actions on her family.
Oh, God. Oh, I didn't have to do that. I wanted to. Oh, my God.
Birthday.
No.
13 years I wanted to go get him.
I'm devastated. Oh, honey.
Oh.
Come kiss me, please.
No, you killed my dad.
Following the interview, Cynthia was taken into custody and charged with first-degree murder. Questions arose about her mental competency to stand trial, given her unusual reactions. However, she was deemed competent, and her trial began in February 2017. The confession meant her guilt was not in question, but the trial focused on whether the murder was premeditated and whether her claims of abuse justified her actions. The defense aimed to have Cynthia found guilty of voluntary manslaughter instead of first-degree murder, arguing that she had snapped after enduring years of abuse. This argument tried to frame her actions within a context of long-term suffering, presenting a complex case that would weigh heavily on the jurors. They presented witnesses, including her niece, who testified about the ongoing abuse she had observed during her visits to the home. Laura, Cynthia's daughter, also supported the claims, having testified against Gieward in a previous trial. The defense tried to frame the murder as an impulsive act driven by years of trauma. In contrast, the prosecution contended that the murder was premeditated. They pointed out that Cynthia had taken several calculated steps before the shooting. She had purchased a gun, practiced at a shooting range, and bought bullets weeks in advance. This preparation indicated that the act was not a spontaneous response, but rather a planned assault. Moreover, Cynthia's behavior during the trial raised further concerns about her state of mind. Her behavior was erratic. She waved at the judge and smiled, which struck many as inappropriate given the gravity of the charges against her. Gieward's sister, Joranna Birunak, directed harsh words at Sidibaka in court, stating that Gieward had been stolen from them in 2014 by a cold-blooded murderer, and that Sidibaka was an evil person who deserved every second behind bars. She vowed never to forgive what she referred to as a horrible monster. She provided a powerful victim impact statement, accompanied by 15 photos that captured Gieward's life, love for his family, and enthusiasm for life. These images served to remind the jury of the person behind the tragedy and the intense loss suffered by his family.
Every one of these photos epitomize him, his family, and his love of life.
In contrast, Gieward's brother George expressed his pain, but also his capacity for forgiveness. He shared that every time his brother's name was mentioned, he would break down and cry. After 2 days of deliberation, the jury found Cynthia guilty of first-degree murder, emphasizing that she had no right to take the law into her own hands. On March 23, 2017, She was sentenced to life in prison, with a minimum of 50 years before she could be considered for parole. Despite the verdict, there lingered a sense of incompleteness surrounding the case. The harshness of the murder was shocking, especially since Cynthia had to reload her weapon multiple times. It was a long and painful attack, which felt even more unsettling because she celebrated her birthday not long after. When she learned that Geward was dead, her happy reaction added another layer of complexity to her character. While the trial details were widely reported, a court document from October 2018 provided deeper insight into the abuse that Cynthia claimed to have suffered. It's important to note that this document was submitted by Cynthia's defense, presenting only her perspective, as Geward was unable to defend himself. This added a layer of meaning to the narrative, leading to questions about the motivations behind Cynthia's horrific actions. What might have driven her to such a desperate act? Cynthia appealed her conviction, claiming she did not receive a fair trial and that her defense team was inadequate. It was as part of this appeal that the document was submitted, to provide much more detail about the abuse than what was revealed during the trial. The document describes how Geward often harmed Laura, including suffocating her and physically punishing the children with a belt. He would verbally abuse them, belittling them and comparing them unfavorably to the family dogs. The document also explains how Geward mistreated Cynthia. He frequently turned off the hot water in the granny flat where she lived, forcing her to take cold showers. He would offer to pick her up from her favorite coffee shop, but would deliberately fail to show up, leaving her to wait outside for hours, regardless of the weather. This was part of his punishment for her. Geward also had a habit of hosing Cynthia down in the garden. He used a spray bottle, typically for training dogs, to spray her and the children in the face, which further demonstrated his cruel behavior. More alarmingly, the document details allegations of sexual abuse against Laura, which have not been mentioned in previous reports. These allegations were brought to light by Laura's niece, who often stayed with the family. One day she heard Laura crying inside the bedroom she shared with Geward and saying, "Get off me." The next day the niece asked Laura what was happening, and Laura revealed the horrific treatment she endured. She explained that Geward would suffocate her and hold her down until she lost consciousness, after which he would assault her. When the niece heard this, she was horrified and immediately told Cynthia about Laura's situation. It must have been incredibly painful for Cynthia to hear such distressing news about her daughter, leaving her deeply upset and concerned. This new information sheds light on the gravity of the abuse faced by Cynthia and her children. Earlier in the story, it was mentioned that Cynthia was supposed to visit her niece for a short time, but ultimately canceled her trip. This change was led by her discovery of the alleged sexual abuse. While the disclaimer noted that there may not be substantial proof for these claims, if they are true, they certainly provide a deeper understanding of the situation. It's important to clarify that finding out about such abuse does not justify murder. However, it does help explain Cynthia's reaction and her sense of relief in the interview after she killed Geward. The real question isn't whether she's guilty. It's clear she is. But was there premeditation involved in her actions? We may never know exactly when Cynthia decided to take such drastic measures. Was it after learning about the abuse? Was it witnessing Geward hit one of the children? Or perhaps it was the night before the murder, when her granddaughter expressed hurt over how Geward treated her. These uncertainties make it difficult to determine the timeline of Cynthia's decision. It appears that the murder may have been premeditated, considering Cynthia had been practicing at a shooting range just 2 weeks prior to the incident. On the morning of the murder, it seems she snapped after Geward insulted her appearance. While no one likes to be insulted, it seems relatively minor compared to everything else happening in her life. There's even a possibility that she could have approached that morning with the gun already in hand, ready to confront Geward. Maybe she had enough. Her daughter, Laura Salinas, who was also the widow of the victim, expressed her sorrow, stating that it was a tragedy and that she loved her mom and Geward. She mentioned that there was no win for anyone and described the situation as complete sadness. Sabra Cabrera, Sidabasa's niece, shared her perspective, saying that Sidabasa was not a monster and had always been a loving mother to her and a good grandmother to the kids. She found it hard to see her go away. This case is tragic for all involved. Laura lost both her husband and mother, and Cynthia, acting without remorse, took away her father and husband, impacting his family as well. Ultimately, this ends the story of the killer grandma, a heart-wrenching tale with devastating consequences for everyone. Do you think Cynthia's actions were justified? And what would you have done in her situation? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys soon.